Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Father's Day is just around the corner, and you probably need to get a gift for your dad. And if your dad is hairy, make him proud this year. And less hairy, get him and yourself the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0. That's right. You heard that right. The Lawnmower 4.0. 20% off plus free shipping with the code CLEAREDHOT at manscaped.com. Manscaped is the only men's brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming and just launched their Lawnmower 4.0. So imagine surprising your dad with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized body hair trimmer that says, "Your balls will thank you" on the box. Maybe somebody else will that day as well. The 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. You might ask yourself, how is it different than other trimmers? Well, the upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. This is a great feature if your father or yourself do a lot of traveling. Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths, sizes 1 through 4. And if your dad has a hairy nose, which most dads seem to, there's the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. It is the best nose and hair trimmer on the market and the perfect gift for your pops. Again, 20% off free shipping with the code CLEAREDHOT at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using the code CLEAREDHOT. Don't forget that you came from your dad's balls. This year, show him how much you love him with some Manscaped so they're not hairy and looking like coconuts. This episode is also brought to you by Audible, and you may be asking yourself, well, what is Audible? They are the leading provider of spoken word entertainment, and it's all in one place. At Audible, you can find the largest selection of audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers and new releases to celebrity memoirs, languages, business, motivation, and more, like original entertainment from top celebrity creators and thousands of popular and binge-worthy podcasts. As an Audible member, you get 1 credit every month, good for any title in their entire premium selection. That means the latest bestseller, the buzziest new release, whatever it may be, whatever you're into. Those titles are yours to keep forever in your own Audible library. Right now, they have a great offer. Only $9.95 a month for your first 6 months. And for a limited time, in addition to accessing one title from the premium selection, you can download and stream thousands of all-you-can-listen audiobooks, originals, and podcasts for less than the regular price of membership. They also have a new Plus catalog, which adds even more value to your Audible membership. And it gives all members a chance to listen to and discover new favorites and new formats, like the exclusive Words Plus music series or a podcast that you've never considered before. There are thousands of titles, thousands of authors, thousands of content creators to choose from. The best thing that I can recommend is visit audible.com/clearedhot or text clearedhot to 500-500. Again, visit audible.com/clearedhot or text clearedhot to 500-500 and explore it for yourself. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp, and it couldn't be a better pairing to this episode because I talked to my dad quite a bit about mental health. Just like everybody else I know, there's usually something interfering with your happiness or prevents you from achieving the goals that you may have. BetterHelp is here to help you. They will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. This is not a crisis line, and it is not self-help. Stand by, strap in, and prepare to do the work. It is professional counseling done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas, and this service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor, and they are going to respond to you timely with a thoughtful response. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to go into a waiting room if that type of environment makes you uncomfortable. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. If you had a bad experience or have had one, don't let that be what holds you back. Keep searching for that person you can connect with. Visit betterhelp.com/clearedhot. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/clearedhot, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. Special offer for the listeners, 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/clearedhot. Last but not least, this episode is brought to you by Acre Gold. Let's say you're into investing, and let's say you're into investing in precious metals. The price of gold has been all over the place lately, and now there's a new way to buy gold through a company called Acre. Acre lets you subscribe to gold bars for as little as $30 per month. You pay each month, and once your gold stash reaches the price of their gold bars, they discreetly ship Acre Gold to your house. And just recently, Acre has introduced a new $100 a month subscription to a 5-gram gold bar. Acre lets you invest in physical gold without coming out of pocket all at once. They keep you updated on your gold stash every month, and it ships once you reach the price threshold. With Acre, taking physical delivery of gold means it's safe and sound in your hands, and they ship your gold discreetly and directly to your door. Acre designs their gold in California and sources the gold from one of the largest mints in Switzerland. They provide industry-first packaging that looks and feels more expensive than other gold alternatives. But the big takeaway here is that you don't have to come out of pocket all at once to acquire a meaningful amount of gold, precious metal, over time. If you're interested in diversifying your portfolio, visit getacregold.com/clearedhot and start investing in physical gold today. Make sure you go to this URL because Acre is giving away a gold bar. To qualify for the giveaway, tweet or post why you should be the recipient and mention at @get_Acre. Again, that's getacregold.com/clearedhot. And that's it on the business side of the house. Let's dive in on my guest, Mr. Eddie Gallagher, a return guest to the podcast, actually. We sat down just over a year ago, the first time we had ever met each other. Eddie is a former Navy SEAL, and he came to what could only be described as national attention after he was charged in September of 2018 with 10 offenses under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or UCMJ. Specifically, accusations that he stabbed to death an injured and sedated ISIS prisoner. I'm not even going to get into the charges because we talk about that whole ordeal in the first podcast that we sat down, and we continue the conversation here in the second one, but we talk much more about what the cost of war is on the individual and in our country. His newest endeavor, he is an author, and he has a book getting ready to come out called The Man in the Arena, which actually ties really well into the podcast sponsor Audible. That would be one place where you could find it if you want to. And I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let Eddie speak for himself. Episode number 178 with Eddie Gallagher. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
That is probably the coolest thing about the podcast is exposure to guys like Kyle. He was sitting in that chair. I had never met him before. I met him downstairs. And as he's talking, in my head, I'm telling myself, you need to recalibrate your perspective on life. Because this guy was in a hospital for 3 years. And by hospital, I mean he was in the fucking hospital for 3 years. And I'm doing okay. Living in Montana, complaining about it took them 30 seconds longer to fill in the blank, something that I wanted to do. I left that. And it made me, I think I texted my kids to talk to them about, just appreciation and all of that stuff that goes along with it and just his attitude. And I just wanted to have a conversation with them about it, and then sat down at home and was like, fuck, I have got to up my game.
Dude, I'm telling you, I listened to the podcast, and right after, I went to Andrea, I'm like, you have to listen to this, dude. Like, I was floored. And then, like you said, the rest of the day, I'm like, I have nothing to complain about. Or like,
it's shocking. It's almost like a window that you're looking through gets shattered a little bit.
Yeah.
You're used to just viewing the world through this lens, and then you hear an experience. And for people who haven't listened to that podcast, just stop now and come back to this later.
Yeah.
Go listen to Kyle. He was, I don't know. I know a few people. I only know him and Dakota personally when it comes to Medal of Honor recipients. I guess I know Britt, but I haven't seen Britt in a really long time. But I know some people who have been pretty savagely messed up, and I have almost always been shocked by how their attitude just absolutely inspires me. Like, holy shit. And I want to remind them, like, you're missing your legs, right? Like, we both know you're missing your legs. Like, how are you so positive right now? Like, you don't have any legs under this table.
Yeah, it's almost like I wish you wouldn't be so positive about this. You're making me, but it is. It's inspiring to be around those people. It's the same with Dan Canawson was my OIC, so he lost his legs on our first Afghan deployment. When I came back from that deployment, he was already up and going. We went and ran the Army 10K with him. And it was the same thing. Like, he was so positive. He was like, already, I'm going to be, I think he ended up being, he's not in the Paralympics.
Yeah.
He was already looking forward to that. And yeah, it really, and that's what's beautiful about having guests on like that, then it's not only, you're not only getting something from it, all your viewers are getting something from it.
I had completely forgotten that we were recording anything. I mean, you can feel like the pressure, that the headset on your head. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, we're actually podcasting.
Yeah.
But I was so lost in what he was saying and just kind of enthralled in that story.
Yeah.
If I lost both my legs, let me tell you about how much I'd be thinking about running. It's a literal and figurative round number, fucking 0. I would not be sitting in a hospital bed talking about how I'm going to go do a marathon. I'd be set on the running perspective.
Yeah, I'd like to think, because I'm sure you had these, those thoughts while we were in, and like, oh, if something happens, like if my arm gets blown off, or my leg gets blown off, how would I react to it? And you'd like to think like, oh, I'd be like Dan Knosson, but you never know until that happens. So when you actually see people that go through that, because there are people that go the other route, they get hurt and then they go, it's like down the tubes, and to see people overcome that, and it inspires me, and I'm sure it inspires a hell of a lot of other people to just make their lives better. It's like, hey, guess what? You got both your legs. Now imagine what you can do with that attitude with both your legs.
Yeah, my team leader, probably the single best example of leadership that I've ever been around in the SEAL community. He was an 8 at the time, so an E8. Amazing SEAL career. No scratches on him, none whatsoever. Contracting, pressure plate, both knees, or both legs. I think one below, one above. And you have a medical background. Have you ever heard of them? Which one is more difficult? Is it below the knee? Sometimes they'll amputate higher. Is that
above the knee is the worst?
Okay.
Yeah, like if you get below the knee, and I'm not a complete expert at prosthetics, but I know, like, so in Dan Knosson's case, his were both above the knee, and that was like what we were all hoping for, was it was going to be below the knee.
Okay. I have heard, I guess, sometimes that they will amputate more, or maybe I think that is the case. They'll amputate more because maybe the recovery is better, or there's less to deal with if there's not an articulating joint. But for him, there was one above, one below. From what I heard, he took every pint of blood that they had down at CAF in Kandahar, like crashed on the table a couple times, comes out of it, hadn't spoken to him on the phone in years, called him when he was still in recovery. And I'm like, did this actually happen to you? Because you're fired up about life, amazing attitude still. And it, again, just absolutely recalibrates the way that I feel about my life. I feel so humbled and grateful to know those people.
Yep. I think there's something to it when people go through traumatic situation, especially like his or like Kyle Carpenter's, where it's like you are on the brink of death. And I think it is an awakening for people. They're like, even though they come back and they might be missing 2 limbs or whatever, they're so grateful to just be alive. And it's like almost you're born again. You're like, now I've almost reached death, but now I have this new life that I'm going to make the best of,
So here's the question. How do we simulate that in everybody in the United States? How do we provide for people that awakening? Because I think if you have it, I never had anything close to that. Obviously, I had a night on target that didn't quite go my way. I think I had a few experiences where at least mortality was thrown in front of me, and work through, like, okay, this is relatively scary. We're going to work our way through this. But I think that thrusting of the mortality in your face and those experiences will change your optic. And I think once it changes, it's very hard to go back. But I don't know how to provide that. And that lack of optic, again, non-professional assessment in my opinion, I think that lack of perspective is driving, not the causal factor, but is definitely throwing gasoline on a lot of the fires, metaphorically, that are burning in the U.S. right now.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I think, we want to get into since this past year. I mean, that
was going to be my first question. How has your last year been?
So yeah, you were the first podcast I did last year.
Thank you, by the way, for that.
Well, no, thank you for having me on. It was definitely, it's so funny, like, so if I could, one word that describes this past year for me, and is growth. Like, it's been a whirlwind of just working on myself. It's been a journey, and it hasn't been easy. This past year has been rough in some ways, but it's also been beautiful, and like so many others. So like, when I went and did your podcast, dude, I wasn't even beginning to be a mess yet. Like I had just come out of all that mess. I hadn't even processed.
You probably were still in fifth gear.
Oh yeah, dude. I hadn't processed anything. I thought I had, I think people go back and listen to our first podcast. I sound like, yeah, okay, talking about everything. But dude, in my head, I'm like, I hadn't even begun to process what happened. I mean, I pretty much took that 2 years and did the same thing I did with everything else in my career. Just stuff it down, throw it in the back.
Which I think is the healthiest way to deal with things. I've been told as a man.
Yeah, it's
and if it starts to come up, just apply more weight.
Exactly.
It'll never express poorly.
Don't be weak. Just keep shoving it. Be a man.
That is something we should talk about. The negative consequences of a never quit, never fail
I felt
community.
It. Yeah, and that's when I started feeling it. Is everything just? I mean, I don't think my body could take anymore. It was like it's all coming out. So, after our podcast, I went back and, it was a good couple months of sort of like the honeymoon phase. Like you're just out. You're sort of like, okay, what do I do now? And then I started writing the book. That's when I was like, everything started coming out. I had a real hard time.
Back into it, that process of writing?
Not just, diving back into what had happened during that 2 years, but also having to dive back in pretty much over my 20 years. I had just thrown everything. I had never processed really anything. I mean, losing all the friends that we've lost. I've lost 2 or 3 best friends. I just was like, okay, the only way I got through that was vengeance. Was like, I'm just going to go back over there and keep doing the job. And,
you know what? A way that I tricked myself with it, and that's legitimately what it was a like a justification. Hey, they knew what they were getting into. It's part of the job. This is what it takes. And here's the thing. The reason that's such a good trick is because it's partially true. If not completely true. I knew what I was getting into. You knew what you were getting into, as did they. But of course, I can't speak for anybody else. I was never putting my gear on saying, yep, tonight's the night for me. You're never having that thought. But you know that the odds are there. But you can push it away by saying those things. This is the cost. This is what it takes. We all knew this going in. And it allows you to mentally take a step forward. But like you said, you're packing that suitcase and dragging it with you.
Yep.
You just don't realize that the path that you're leaving behind.
Exactly. Yeah. And then eventually you're going to have to unpack that suitcase, 5-10 years down the road. I don't know the right way to say, like, to deal with that kind of stuff either. Like you said, I think it is true, having that thought process that we had, like, yep, this is what we signed up for. This is the cost. Let's, move on. Let's, go avenge him or do whatever we got to do. But yeah, so when I was writing the book, I had a ghostwriter, Andy Simmons, was helping me out. And so I would write a chapter, send it to him, and then he would make it sound smart, So it's not just my words. He put a lot more description in it. But the thing is, he kept asking me a lot of questions, like, well, what did it smell like? What did this, So then it really caused me to go back and, like, think of past deployments, and it affected me. I was like, okay, I've never even thought about it this way. It's always just been like, yeah, that happened, move on.
What were some of the hardest questions that he was asking you?
I think, about losing my buddies, that those were tough, just being able to deal with the emotion, I guess, of, admitting that I had emotions about it.
Yep.
And I'll tell you this, like, another thing I found out this past year is I am emotionally deficient in a lot of things. Like,
I could have told you that.
Yeah.
I am also I can't say many ways, but I am aware of where I bump up into a place in my own head where I will say to myself, is it right to feel this way? And by that, I mean, is it right to not feel anything?
Yep.
I'm governed, and I don't know if that's who I was before I joined. I don't know if that's, like, from a chemical perspective. I had great parents.
Same here.
Grew up in a totally enriching home where I was working with my dad in physical labor, totally calibrated my compass. I feel like I had great morals going into the military. I feel like I was it's hard to say how emotionally whole you are when you're 18. I wasn't developed, I can tell you that much. But I feel like I could experience that full range of emotion, whereas occasionally, not often, but occasionally I will bump up into situations where I will quietly, and it usually happens in a group of other people who are having like a particular emotional reaction to something, and I'll sit there quietly wondering to myself, is it normal that I don't share this?
Yep. I mean, that's pretty much, yeah. And it what's funny is like when that's normal. You know what I mean? Like you're around the same guys all the time. And
well, it's taught.
Yeah.
The compartmentalization is taught.
So yeah, it was real hard for me. And this is where, the emotional intelligence where I was lacking really came to the forefront, is I was writing this book and getting really pissed. Or I would just get really depressed. I was writing the book. We have a big closet in my second story of our house. So I would go in there to, work on the book, and my wife and kids, they would tell me like, there's something wrong with you. Like I'd come out and I'd be like a completely different person, demeanor, just depressed pretty much. And I was angry, but I had no idea I was angry, or I was I was just frustrated that I was feeling this way. I was like, why am I feeling this way? Why do I have these? I don't know what this is. And my wife's looking at me
almost as if you were frustrated to feel.
Yes. And so my wife.
In general?
Yeah. And it's so, it's funny.
Not that this has ever happened to me. Of course, I'm only talking about you, Eddie.
But you feel like a child. You know what I mean? You're like, oh. Because my wife's like, yeah, those are feelings. And this is how you're supposed to deal. You're supposed to be able to feel this way. You don't have to get mad because you are feeling a certain way or whatever. But to me, I was like, I've never, at 20 years, I haven't dealt with this stuff. So it was very hard to work through. I ended up talking to somebody once a week. I still do. And that was a huge, huge help.
I've been at it now almost 2 years at once a week. And you want to talk about life-changing.
Yeah.
I think people get tired of me talking about it, and now I'm like, fuck you. I'm never going to stop, because it's such an easy, I'm not going to say that. It's not an easy thing to do. Sitting down and talking with somebody for an hour is an easy thing to do. Getting something out of that hour is not easy, because you have to do the work yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Like, oh, I'm going to talk to somebody. It's like, no.
Boom.
You have to do the work. That person is not going to unpack shit for you. They can open doors and say, hello, Mr. Stump, would you like to go through this door? I'm like, no, close. Yeah. Next. We'll get back to that door and next February.
Yeah. So. And that's the key, which you've said this before too. I mean, you have to do the work. You have to make a decision that you want to change. And it took me probably a couple months of just being depressed and being pissed off, doing the book, to where I finally was like, I saw the impact it was having on my wife and kids. They were putting up with it, but they weren't happy about it, and it wasn't comfortable to be around me. And so I was like, you know what, this is it. I have to change. Myself have to change. I have to change the way I think about things. I have to change something, whatever's going on. So that's, I went and started talking to, it's actually, his name is Dr. Chris Frau. He wrote the, have you read the operator syndrome, the paper? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, but I have not read it.
So he wrote that. I mean, this guy is like a saint, dude. He talks to all sorts of operators from every branch.
Let me guess. He finds similarities?
Weird.
To pick a word?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, but he's been doing it for years. So, I mean, for him to, get all this data and then write this paper, it's all common. You look at it, you're like, oh, no shit. It's common sense. But until someone has it on paper, here is everything, I think it's, that's the way to move forward and to get the word out about what we put ourselves through.
Where did he start with you? I'm not familiar with his paper, although I do think I have heard about it, and it talked about a lot of the similarities from an emotional perspective. Mm-hmm. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it talked about, I think a lot of people would think that people from our background are less empathetic, but I actually think a lot of the guys are much more empathetic. but also still very muted in their emotional range.
Yeah.
I might have just totally.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have, we do feel, and we are very emotional people.
I would almost say in this certain range feel very, very deeply.
Yeah. It's just, like you said, we've been trained not to show that. It's control your emotions. Don't show that you're feeling a certain way. And that applies to our job, going on target, having to make these split decisions, like don't let your emotions get the better of you. But that goes for the outside as well. I think we have a hard time balancing those two. So
where'd you guys start? Where'd you guys start?
We started obviously telling the story of the trial and everything, and he had heard of it. And so we went through that thinking like that was the main cause. Like this. Let's walk through this first. So we dealt with that, but that wasn't it. That was definitely part of the reason I was feeling a lot of anger, and anxiety was huge. My anxiety like skyrocketed. But then we kept digging, and we went all back to my childhood. And that's where a lot of this stuff. And I just like you, I had good parents, but I did go through some adversity growing up, and I moved around every 2 years as a military brat. I wasn't the best kid as far as at school. I got kicked out of a lot of schools, got in a lot of fights. Just a very I was angry as a child, and so we dug into that, which that helped out huge. And then just through my career, and we're still we still talk. I haven't even come close to uncovering all of it, but I definitely feel, just in the past year, I feel like a different person.
Does it feel like actual weight off your shoulders?
Yes.
Yeah.
You feel, you don't walk around. Well, what I can say right now is I'm more aware. I'm more aware of if I start feeling a certain way, I'm like, okay, it's coming on. Why is this happening? Why am I getting triggered by this? And then I can work on, calming myself down, which is a lot of it is just breathing, just focusing on
probably recenters you back into the actual moment.
Exactly. And I went and did a lot of treatments as well through the past year. I did the hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT. I did about 60 dives of that.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they have you sleep in that thing, or is it kind of a bounce dive?
It's like an hour, so it's 1 hour each time. So I did 2 a days. So I would go an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon.
And what are those targeting? You might want to unpack it a bit for people who aren't familiar with that.
And believe me, I'm not the right person to be unpacking it
completely. I understand it to be pressure and oxygen.
Yeah.
And then that's the limit of my knowledge.
You're like, go ahead and unpack that, Eddie. Sound like a super smart person. I don't. So what I was told what it does is it sort of heals the brain. So they've been using it on NFL players and also autistic kids or autistic adults. I just sent my dad down there who he just started displaying some signs of early Alzheimer's. So he went down, and it's supposed to help heal your brain, heal your body. I felt great when I was doing it.
After the first session, you noticed
no, it was probably 20 sessions in. I was like, okay, I feel better. I feel clear, and my thinking was a lot clearer. My attitude was just better, and my body actually felt good. Like working out and everything. It's almost like in second phase when we're doing on the Draeger.
The best recovery for a hangover.
Yeah,
Draeger dive.
Your run times improve in second phase because you're constantly on
pressure and oxygen.
Yeah,
pure O2 for the Draegers people.
And it's the same premise with this HBOT. So I did get some benefits out of it. I'll tell you, it's not the end all be all, and a lot of it sort of wore off. And then I went to the Mexico trip. That was a pretty.
Did you go through with Taco?
I didn't go through with he went before.
He probably set up that or facilitated.
Amber Capone.
Okay.
Amber and Marcus Capone set it up for me. I worked with Marcus, and when I was a first phase instructor, so I had a good relationship with him. Them and the SEAL Future Foundation, they all sort of helped me out with getting me out there.
What was the determining factor for you to make the decision to head down there? Because from the people that I have talked to, the reason I ask that is I know of one person who had, hard to describe it for him. He ended up taking his life later on, but would go through those treatments. And from most of the people that I have talked with, the treatment is impactful and not for a short period of time.
Yeah.
This individual would relapse relatively quickly afterwards. So it's not a faucet you can just turn it on and off.
No.
Much like, I don't think anything, much like counseling isn't.
I was just going to
Saw
say.
a counselor on Wednesday, I'm good. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, motherfucker. One time, you need to put a couple of zeros behind that, and then you're going to be making some progress. But in the descriptions that I've heard from people that have gone on those, whether it be Ibogaine or ayahuasca, I'm assuming it's probably Ibogaine.
Yep.
It's not pleasurable in the experience. It is
Hell no.
rough.
Dude. I mean, I'd like to see this. I'd like to see somebody take it and go party just to be like, see what they would do. But yeah, there's no way I would take that as a recreational drug. It is super intense. It's not fun. It's not like horrible either. It's just, it's work. So just like we talked about before.
Like in your face is what I've heard it described as. Like you can try to avoid it if you want to, but it's like a woodpecker at the bridge of your nose, just smashing at you.
Yeah, you can't. Well, you're not escaping it. Once you take those 2 capsules, you better
Strap in,
strap in. Here we go for 10 hours. Like
10 hours?
Yeah, mine was about 10 hours. And I'll tell you what, I had a very good experience. I didn't throw up. This is actually pretty funny. I had prepped before I went. So when I made the decision to go, I had talked to enough guys that had been, and surprise, they all were dealing with the same issues that I was. And it wasn't, I talked to my wife about it, and so she definitely was like, what the fuck? This is crazy. So I had her talk to a bunch of other spouses whose husbands had gone through, and finally she was like, "Okay, yeah, let's do this." So before I went, they assign you a counselor. So I called up and they're like, "Okay, this counselor calls you probably like a month and a half out and walks you through." They won't tell you what the experience is going to be. They're like, "We're not going to like discuss that because each person has their own."
I was going to say, imagine
it'll give you like a bias when you go in. But what they do is they were like, start meditating, start working on your breathing, really like try to build up to hours of just your eyes closed and breathing, which is, I couldn't even do 5 minutes, at that time. I was like, this is ridiculous. But I busted my ass trying to get to that point. I got to like 45 minutes and I was like, this is,
So you're laying the foundation though.
Yeah. And then I worked on, my diet. They were like, hey, cut out alcohol, cut out, bad food. I eat predominantly pretty healthy, but, the drinking, I was like, okay. I stopped that for the month before I went. And, they want you to cut out caffeine. I was like, that's not happening.
Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Everybody has limits.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, guys, I'll take the 90%.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that last rule.
But I think that's that definitely helped me going into it. I think some guys show up just like, with a regular team guy, like, let's figure it the fuck out and let's do this. And then once that medicine kicks in, if you haven't worked on your breathing or worked on really centering yourself, I can see that going completely haywire. And then that's where a lot of guys throw up. They get disoriented because you do. So the first 10 minutes when I took that medicine, I waited for it to kick in. There was 3 other guys in the room with me. You have a blind, sleep mask on. You're laying on a bed. You have people there watching over you. You have EKGs hooked up to you. And they told me, they're like, you'll know it's kicking in when you hear a buzzing sound. And I was like, okay. I think I was the last one for it to kick in because I was hearing everybody else throw up. I was like, oh shit,
that's not awesome.
No, I was like, oh God.
Sweet. This is what I have coming right around the corner. Awesome. Glad I came.
Yeah. I was like, here we go. But then all of a sudden the buzz, it's like a loud buzz. It sounds like like a chainsaw, or you're just like, wah, and you're like, oh shit. And I felt the back of my brain just like, it's like lights up. And the bed started, I mean, legitimately the bed was trying to buck me off. It was like a bronco just going around the room, and you legitimately feel like this is happening. You're like, you know, your body's going nuts. Then the bed started flying around the room, like slamming back and forth, like feels like it's trying to get you off. And that's where the breathing came into play. I was like, okay, I know this is the drug. Just breathe and get through this. And then, you know, that lasted probably about 10 minutes. And once that went away, it was, you know, it shot me up into space. And I just started seeing my life, like, a whole movie before my eyes, from the moment I was born all the way up to present. But, you know, you could like pick which scenes out of your life you wanted to deal with, or you wanted to.
So there was some semblance of control that you had over what you were confronting?
Yes. You definitely have some control. I mean, I did, to where I was watching this film and I would go like, okay, I don't want to, you know, that's great. But then, you know, it would show me something else and I'm like, oh, I want to dive into that. And then I could dive into that scene, and then that scene would be an even bigger, like go in and like say it was a scene of me and my dad when I was little. And I'm like, okay, I want to see that, more of that. Then it would just show me more of that scene and what happened afterwards. It's hard to explain.
I have zero experience with psychedelics, but incredibly, I'm fascinated by it. And again, anytime anybody's willing to talk about their experience, because some guys are not. I know of a lot of guys who've gone down there and have said nothing about it to anybody, which I completely and utterly respect, of course.
Yeah.
But I think the more people are willing to talk about the experience and what they got out of it, I think that, as with many things, right? You need to be able to groundswell to sway.
Exactly. Well, be vulnerable. I'm like, yeah, this is what I did, and if it did work for me, you know, in the end, it was a good thing. It laid a foundation for me of, you know, at the end of that 10-hour experience, and this is the crazy thing is, after the 10 hours, like it ended, and I just lift up my face mask, and I think it was like, you know, 9 in the morning. I get up, and one of our good buddies, he was I don't know if I won't say his name, but he was a guest on your show. He was there, and he was like, dude, you didn't move a muscle all night. He's like, your heart rate was flat. Like, we thought you flatlined. And they're like, we came over and you just had the biggest smile on your face the whole time. While the three other guys were like puking their guts out. And I mean, I felt bad for them. Just like that looked
Fuck that. You won the ayahuasca, dude.
Yeah.
Everything's a competition.
Boom. Crushed it. What's next?
First place or no place, bitches.
It was, it was good. I went out and I wrote probably like 6 pages in my diary, I brought a notebook, and I'm like, I want to write down everything that I got out of this. Wrote down 6 pages, and you have the rest of the day to chill, and then the next day you do the 5-MeO-DMT, which is the
toad venom?
Yes, the toad venom.
Which I've heard is impossible to describe.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they call it the handshake. Okay, so you do the Ibogaine. That shows you what you want to know. And so before you even do the Ibogaine, you have to write down your intentions of what you want to get out of the medicine, and then you throw those intentions in a fire. They do like a whole seance, yeah.
I think a seance is where you move the little board around.
Ouija
board. Seance is when you're trying to communicate with the dead, I think.
You are probably correct.
I like that you used that term, though.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
You're like, because they're waving sage around, and they have like a shaman there, and
it's very spiritual.
Oh, it's very spiritual, very reverent, and you can whatever your beliefs are. Like, you know, I'm a Christian. I went out. You know, they did the whole still call it a seance with the sage and everything. And so after that, I went outside and got on my knees and prayed and talked to God for 10 minutes. And I was just like, please, you know, let me get something out of this that, you know, that I need to get. So after you do the Ibogaine, it shows you like what your intentions were, and here's why you're feeling this way, or whatever. But you sort of come out of it like, okay, I still have this feeling, but it showed me what I wanted to see, but I'm still not all the way there. That's where the 5-MeO-DMT is supposed to release everything, and it does. I went up there. smoke it. I think you breathe in for 10 seconds, hold it for 10 seconds, let it go, and as soon as you let it go, you fall back, and they have you on a bed. But the thing is, when you fall back, there's no bed there. You're just like falling. It's nuts. And so it all comes down to trust. So you just have to trust the medicine, and you're like, because you can freak out. Like, people do freak out. They fall back, and then they're like, oh shit, because there's no control. And so I just let it not just keep falling, and I just kept going. And then all of a sudden it's like this, and it's not, I'm sure it's different for everybody, but for me, I saw it was like these bright colors, like pink, all these hues, and they were sort of just like pulsating, and you feel this just intense love. I mean, it's this crazy feeling, and I was just bawling my eyes out. It was like just getting everything out that I had seen through the Ibogaine and just releasing it. And I took it 2 more times because they were like, hey, do you think you got everything out? Because it only lasts, I'd say about 5 minutes.
Does it feel like 5 minutes, or does it feel longer when you're in it?
No, it to me, it felt like 5 minutes. Like, okay. You're still like aware. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling this way. And then it does go away. And then they give you like a couple minutes, like, hey, do you want another one? I'm like, okay. So I did it 3 times. The third time I was like, I think I got everything out. I walked downstairs, and I literally went, they put you in a bedroom just to chill out, and I started laughing, like, but it was like like I was a kid again, just like happy laughing. It was pretty amazing. So, I left there feeling you leave there feeling like you have like a glow about you. You're like, you're sort of reborn. You feel, everything on the outside, the sky, the trees, it's just is more intense. And that lasts for a couple months. But just like everything else, like we talked about with the counseling, like, you still have to put in the work afterwards. Like, guess what? That's not the end all be all. It'll go away. Yeah. So it's to continue to put in that work and deal with your issues, and I think that's what I got out of all the treatments I did. And I think that's like the message that I'm trying to put out to dudes, like, there's no magic pill that's going to make this stop. Like, you have to be the one to fight for yourself. You spent 20 years or however many years fighting for this country, fighting for the brothers next to you, the right and left of you. Now it's time to fight for yourself, keep that fight going, and make yourself a better person, for you and for your family. And that's what it is. That's what it's all about. It's, I'm not there yet. I'm not completely healed, nor will I ever be. It's just,
I was gonna say, I don't think that road has an end.
No.
I think you're just on that path.
Yeah.
What did you expect to get out of that treatment? Like, what was it where you're like, you know what, I'm going to go here because this is the one for me, or this course of treatment I think will be impactful?
I can tell you my intent, which I wrote down. I wanted to feel happy again, like, not just happy, like, oh, but I wanted to feel like I looked at my kids, like the way they play and laugh, and they're just like so innocent, and you're like, dude, I want to feel like that again, like have that energy, and so I wrote that down. Like, I think I wrote down, like, I want to feel innocence again, and then I said I wanted to deal with the stuff in my past, and then just uncover. I want to be a better person. I think I want to be a better person and husband, father for my wife and kids.
What'd your wife say about you after you came back?
She noticed a big difference. I literally got off the plane, and she picked me up, and it probably lasted a second. I started bawling in front of her, and I was like, I'm sorry for, everything, just anything I've done in the past. But then we talked, and she noticed a big difference. It was, you're more aware of your emotions. It helps you. That's what helps you big time. You're like, okay, I feel happy. I feel sad. And this is why. And I could sort of articulate why I was feeling certain ways, which was great with her because then we can have like a conversation about it. Where before I would just shut down and be like, yeah,
Wall it off.
whatever. I'm not talking about it.
If you could go back and talk to your young self with the knowledge of the baggage that comes with the job, would you still do it?
In a heartbeat. Yeah. There's no, I knew when I signed, I mean, as young as we were, I was 19. I knew when I signed up, I don't think I knew exactly what I was sacrificing, but I knew I was like, my ass belongs to the military. I'm willing to give up whatever to, serve my country. Now at the time, my young self, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And I don't even think you know what it means when you're 10 years, 15 years in. You're just like, yeah, I'm sacrificing my freedoms. I'm sacrificing
you're
time
lost in
away
the
from
job.
family. Yeah. It's not until you get out till you really start like, oh shit, this is what they're talking about. Yeah, there's parts of you that are affected. But that comes with the job. So I would never, I would willingly give all that, everything that I've had to deal with, I'd do it again with the same outcome.
Do you think it's possible? So if we reduce warfare down to at some point, it's a human being like you and I squaring off. You see your enemy, you make a life and death decision, which I think is what warfare has been like since the beginning of warfare.
Yeah.
Right? There's ways that you could remove that with technology like Preds and Reapers and all that stuff, which has limits. I think there will always be a place for a human being crossing the threshold of a door somewhere, because I've thought a lot about this. If you really think about our old job, at some point it's to get us somewhere to go through the threshold of a door or a compound or something.
Yes.
And so again, can you isolate and contain and blow it up with a JDAM? Sure. Not when they surround themselves with women and children, because they're not stupid. They understand our limitations. Given that is the requirement, do you think it's possible to have people doing that job without the baggage that comes with it? Or is that just the cost of war? And I ask because if we can accept that it's the cost of war, I think as a society and a country, we need to have many more conversations about the cost, the bill that's going to come due at the end, instead of ignoring that. You know what I mean? Because I personally land on I don't know if it's possible to do that job without the baggage. But it's not addressed until it's a fucking catastrophe at the end. And that's a disservice to not only the people who have to carry that baggage, but I think our country as a whole.
Yeah. And I know. I don't think that you could do this job, especially a combat-related job, and not come back with some baggage. I mean, and it differs for each person, right? I mean, you could have a person go on one combat deployment, and like that's enough for them, and then they could have PTSD or whatever for the rest of their life. And then you have guys in right now that are 16 deployments in, still going, but
which that's an interesting conversation in of itself as well. When do you step in? Can you step in? Would they let you step in and self-regulate so they can actually be a functioning human being for the rest of their life, let alone a contributing member to society?
Yeah, or would that person that's on 60 deployments let you step in? And
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, would they allow you to? Would they?
I could tell you from where I was at, no. You couldn't have told me, like, hey, man, I think you need to take a knee. I was like, why?
But I think that comes, again, based on why I asked you that question. I think that comes from the fact that they don't address the baggage until it becomes an issue at the end. Like, I would like to believe that like people like to ask me questions about the conceptual nature of war. I'm like, listen, at the very best, I operated at a tactical level, and that there's levels of war, right? Strategic, operational, tactical, and I was this little motherfucker over here, like running around with my own gun.
I was a pawn.
Yeah, like, but willingly, and I enjoyed my job. It doesn't make me an expert at things. I knew a little bit up the chain of command or up the ladder, the bureaucracy of the wheels that make war work. But really fast, I get out of my pay grade, and people ask questions. I'm like, I don't know. But at a strategic level, I wonder if, at a policy level, the United States, and say they're sitting at a table like this with, social distancing, there will be 2 people here, right? Couldn't have 6 or 8. But let's say that there's 8 of the smartest people in the world trying to figure out the policy going forward and whether we're going to be interventionist or we're going to get involved in different areas. I wonder if they talk about the after.
The cost.
The cost.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the last thing on the menu, if on the menu at all. And that's why you can't stop the dude who's 16, 18 deployments deep, because nobody's fucking paying attention to that. And I can say from my own experience, and on this topic, people ask me all the time about my experience. I saw way less action than a lot of people and more than some.
Yep.
It's very hard to measure that, so I can only talk from my experience. But if I hadn't gotten shot and had that race car in fifth gear jammed into reverse, I'm like, there went the tranny, and had to lift my head up a little bit. I know exactly what you're saying. Like, there's no way that you could have stopped me. I was doing what I wanted to do at an incredibly high level. And even if presented with somebody saying, hey, you need to take a knee, I would have ignored that.
Yeah.
And to my own detriment.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, we're self-destructive in that manner where we'll just keep going until we cannot. I mean, that was my mindset. It was like, I will keep doing this job until my body and brain cannot physically do that anymore. And that is the most selfish, my perspective now.
Yeah.
That's the most selfish attitude when you are married and have kids. Like, I'm not thinking about how they're doing,
yeah,
or how they're going to deal with me. I'm just like, this is what I want to do.
And on the other side of that, being selfish and focusing on the job to the exclusivity of everything else is what makes it possible for the community or communities. Special operations in general, I have nothing but respect for everybody in that world. And I know SEALs get a lot of fucking airtime, but there's so many other communities out there doing great things. But in those communities, guess what you're going to find? People focusing on the job to the exclusivity of other things. Family, divorce rate is what it is for a reason. Kids, and that razor blade, it's what allows people to do amazing things on target or get to a target.
Yep.
I don't know how to balance it.
Exactly. And I don't know how, I don't know the answer. It's because I've had, people ask me the same thing. Well, what's too much? And
again, it depends on the person.
It depends. Yeah. It depends on the person. And I think, if too much is 1 or 2 deployments, then great. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's like, I almost feel,
maybe being able to identify what is too much per person would be a step in the right direction. Because I can think back, I've spent some time in the same place, lovely Fab Nabahar. When we were
getting Nabahar to Nabahar.
When we were building the new compound, and sometimes it would rain mortars as opposed to rain, and we were getting the metal rain one day as opposed to the liquid rain. And I remember seeing one of our comm guys. He was fucking fried after that. After 1 or 2 of those evolutions of being on the receiving end of, the mortars that they'll set up, and they're so far gone by the time they fire off anyway. So there's no chance to even really defend yourself, which is probably the most... I think that's what I hate the most, is when you're just on the receiving end. There's actually nothing you can do to change the outcome, and you're like,
because you're on the defensive.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't even... There's nothing even to shoot back at.
Yeah.
It scrambled him. To the point where, you know what, maybe you need to go back and let's work on comms, back at the TU headquarters. Identifying that as opposed to pushing it and forcing it, for him, great decision.
Mm-hmm.
But you only got 16 operators out there.
And was he a SEAL?
He was not.
Okay, so this
peripheral, right? Yeah. So to the mortars, to me, I remember I was in flip-flops and board shorts with my gear on, running up to go get him to a machine gun position, and found the dude in the bunker 2 hours later, still shaking, smoking. No judgment of that individual whatsoever. We had such divergent training pipelines. Yep. Well, actually, I had a training pipeline. I don't think he had any pipeline that involved mortars at comm school.
Yeah.
Right. So one, I'm like, this is an expected portion of my job. He, on the other end, it's unraveling him, but you have to address those two things differently. And I look at the people that I served with, holy shit, man, there's not a template of I can spot a team guy from 100 miles away, but we're all so incredibly different. And so I'm not smart enough to figure out how you move the stereo needles, or not needles, the knobs, and 8 guys are doing okay over here, but you need to pull these 2 back. And maybe it's not they leave the community. Maybe it's they go back to Mogensen or whatever, and they get out of it for a little bit and rotate through, and all that shit's lost when you're just task saturated with target after target after target. I don't have the answers for it.
But you also then say that let's have that scenario where we're like, okay, this hey, these two guys aren't doing so hot, or they're not, let's pull them back. You know as well as I know, like, if those two guys get pulled out, 2 or 3 guys get pulled out, the rest of the guys are like, where the fuck did they go?
Yeah.
And then that's when the shit talking starts, or whatever. They're like, weak, you know.
And
that's out of, like, I'm not saying that's out of hate either. That's team guys just busting balls.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, those guys aren't feeling it that way. Like, they're leaving. They're, like you said, you're not at the table. You're on the menu.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be on the menu. So no one, what I see is no one really wants to stop, because they're like, there's that peer pressure as well, where like, okay, I don't want to be, I'm going to keep going, even though I probably should take a break, because I don't want to let my guys down and end up being on the menu.
And that, I think, may be something that you could address culturally early on, right? Like, one of the beauties of the SEAL teams, of which I think there are many, I wouldn't be the person I am today absent those experiences, positive and negative. But that origin point, right, where we all step through the quarterdeck and get our ass handed to us immediately for the next 6 months. You don't learn shit in buds other than to be hard and to run and all that stuff.
Just how much grit you have.
But that's where these things of, like, never quit, focus on everybody to the exclusion of yourself, right? Never let down your teammates. Again, I am not smart enough to figure this out, but I agree with you. If those two people say, hey, I need to take a break from this, they are going to get consumed unless there's a way to change it culturally. And I think we have the ability to do that because of that inception and origin point. And then again, this is where I hope at the fucking strategic level, the people who are trying to figure this stuff out and like, okay, these are the countries that we need to go in, and these are the places that we need to be for the security of the United States. Like, roger that. And then let's talk about the cost. Like, that has to be an all-encompassing conversation. Otherwise, the people who are carrying the baggage around are going to get crushed at some point.
And like you said, I don't think the cost even comes close to coming up in those conversations when they make these strategic decisions. I mean, you can go back to the past 20 years and some of the strategic decisions that were made. You know that wasn't talked about. You know that the cost.
I fear that it wasn't even considered.
No. I mean,
and that's the benefit of not having to send your own son or fucking do it yourself. Like, hey, buddy, yeah, we'll do this. You want to come with?
Exactly. The more of that needs to happen. It's like, you should come out. I mean, you see it when we're out there and these generals or admirals make their battlefield circulations when we're out at these shithole fobs that are getting attacked every other day. They always show up on like when it's the safest time to come out. They get a 20-minute glance around. They're like, all right, everything looks good. And you're like, all right, see ya. And go right back to, doing what we're doing. And they go back and give that report back like, hey, everything's great. We're winning. When, matter of fact, it's like, why don't you come out and talk to the guys and really find out what's going on? I mean,
talk to that comm guy.
Yeah.
Who can barely get the cigarette into his mouth. We had a general come out at Nalbahar, and we did a foot patrol west of the fob for like maybe a click, like out and back. He was on nods. I'm pretty sure he had a rifle, which is the most dangerous portion of the evolution. But why? And then he left, and I mean,
it's like, what kind of situation awareness are you really getting by spending that little time? I mean,
does he have the time to sit down and get the real spit from the guys?
Yeah.
Here's a better question. Does he actually want the real spit?
Or are the guys allowed to give him the real spit? Because, when these generals and admirals show up, it's like, hey, shut the fuck up. Don't ask any questions. Don't ask stupid questions. Don't say anything that's going to piss them off. But in reality, you always have that one or two guys in the platoon who don't give a shit. And they're like, why the fuck are we here? What do we,
And the OIC's just like,
yeah, like, here we go. But I mean, it's funny to look back now, after the experience that I've had, and then, you've had over the past 2 decades, and just to see, like, I think when I was in and like going through all that, I always had this trust of like, these people who are making the strategic decisions are smarter than I am, and they're looking out for us. And then as you keep going on in this war, you come to the realization, like, no, like, this is, like I was saying, I was back in Mosul, for the second time, clearing it again. And for what, like, I get the purpose was to, clear out ISIS, but what are we doing after? And who are we handing it off to? Like, are we going to come back here in another 5 years to do this again? I don't think those decisions they're not thought through. Then same with, the VSO coin strategy. I mean, I remember that's how we ended up in Nabahar. We were out doing disruption ops for having the time of our lives for 4.5 months, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're on this new coin strategy, the counterinsurgency. You guys are going to go out to Nabahar. And at that time, I don't even think they had called it VSO yet.
Which stands for Village Stability Operations, basically embedding and living with the local populace.
Yes, which is the ODA, that's like their bread and butter, but
they're fucking good at it too.
Oh yeah, they're awesome at it. And we somehow got volunteered to join in that, and we figured it out as team guys do. We're like,
I don't think it was volunteered. I think they decided that there was a need for it, and there was a discrepancy between what was required and the manning. And so if you look at most special operations, there used to be, I feel, some very precise legacy tasks, and I guess they still exist. Like, of course, team guys are going to have that maritime aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's a combat swimmer operation, you're probably better off coming to the SEALs.
Yeah.
But if you want to see as an airfield, you might want to go to the Rangers, right?
Mm-hmm.
PJCCT, let's go to the Air Force for those guys and their specialty. Of course, there's the ODAs, the by, with, and through, and build like the FID component, all that stuff. I found as it went on, if you were to give each of them a color on a palette, they all started to creep a little bit more towards the gray. And I think a lot of those people at those senior levels just started looking at SOF as SOF, which I guess to a degree you kind of could have, because they're very good. They're good problem solvers. That's a lot of what the training is. And like you said, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll adapt.
But it doesn't mean that we're great at it.
Or that we should be doing it.
Yeah. And there's going to be a ramp-up time period and stand by for some catastrophic mistakes along the way, which is not an excuse for them. But, yeah, it became much more gray. So I think, I look back at 2010. The kinetic nature had probably peaked over the top a little bit and was coming down. So then people are starting to look about relevancy, budget, deployment cycle. You don't want to miss out on this because that might mean you miss out on that. There's a lot of other shit that goes on. That's one of the biggest things I don't know if people understand is the amount of things required. Like, again, if we define our job is at some point crossing the threshold of a door and going through that, the number of things required to actually make that happen
to get to that point
is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. It takes, I think what people don't, it takes a large majority of, the military to get me or you through that door. It's not just the SEAL team.
People are fighting for that opportunity. The Ranger, and I don't mean fighting in a negative way. Maybe competition is better, but the Rangers are competing for the target deck that's available at the vanilla level, which is a classified term, everybody.
That is class. We'll get into that.
And same thing at the JSOC level too. Like great friends over at CAG, right? But you got DMNEC and CAG, and they're going back and forth.
Yeah, it's it's friendly competition.
It is, and when things go over the top, meaning the demand starts to go over the top, maybe this isn't our mission set, but we're going to take it because we still want to stay engaged and involved.
Exactly.
Guys want to be on their 16th deployment and 17th deployment, which again brings us back. Maybe, and again, I have no solutions for this, and only questions about my own life, because I do think a lot about what would I have done if somebody said that to me. I would have given them the "you're number one" salute, But at that strategic level, maybe that's our first little look into the insight where those topics start happening, and at a group level or at a command level, those conversations, they're starting to begin. I'm not saying it's the solution, but maybe it's at least a step in the right direction, and now we're looking at the bigger picture. And at the end of the day, I don't fucking know.
I don't fucking know either. Like, I don't know what the solution is. I can tell you what I think it's a big concern of mine. It's definitely when we added that pillar onto our nonprofit, like dealing with the mental health of everybody getting out and taking care of guys as they transition. And what I'm doing so what I've done is I'll go, so I made friends with some 7th group guys, right? They're down near me. I went out, did a 12-mile ruck run with them, and then afterwards talked to them about transition and about everything that I've been through. And I can tell you it had a huge effect on them. Their chief warrant officer called me the next day and he was like, dude, you have no idea the effect that had. And not just because I wasn't some guy coming in hey guys, I was a SEAL and this is what, because as you know, when you're 10 years in, you're like, oh, whatever, dude. But because I decided to put myself through some misery with them, because that's one thing we can all share together is we all know how to be miserable together.
The suck.
I'm like, I'll go suck this up with you guys. And
Such a stupid currency.
yeah, it is, but it works, because I'll tell you, those guys were like, all right, this dude came in, did this miserable ruck run with us, and then it gave me the platform. They're like, I will listen to him, because he came in and proved himself, and now I'll listen to this guy. And that's, I think that is definitely part of the solution, is to get the word out, talk about transition, talk about the effects of the job. I'm not saying those effects are going to happen. Like I'm not talking about mitigating them. I'm just talking about, hey, when these do happen, when you get out, this is what 90% of the time is going to happen. And here are the solutions. Like, here's where you can go to get help. Here's the nonprofits that you can go use. Here's the treatments that I went through that helped. And I think that's definitely part of the solution right now, is for guys to be open about what they're dealing with, and then share that, and then help other guys as they're about to come out.
I have only one issue with that. That's people at the tactical level helping other people at the tactical level.
That's
and
true.
it allows, and again, what you're talking about is beautiful, right? Because I look back in my career, I'm like, oh, how many countless times did I have somebody come talk to me about transition? Fucking zero.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that didn't happen with me. I figured it out on my own. I'm not pissed about that when it comes to my departure, but I can honestly say it wasn't the emphasis of the organization that I was serving with. I love seeing the tactical guys taking care of the tactical guys. They have the best, again, same currency, right? But that doesn't change the fucking conversations at the strategic or national level. And I don't know how to make a sweeping impact unless it starts at least being addressed at that level.
But at that level, you also have politics involved at that level, which don't make sense. There's decisions that are made that are completely they're disingenuous decisions, and I think that they're not thinking about the guys that are going to be affected going to make that do the decision that they're making.
They're detached.
They're detached from it.
Again, back at the metaphorical table, they're detached from the decisions that they're actually making.
Yes.
Execution of.
There you go. I was trying to articulate that.
What do you think? How do you think it would be received if they forced guys to go through what you did when you got out? If it was just you were getting ready to get out, but for the last month you were forced into that some type of pipeline.
As far as like a pipeline
where you're going to get identified with a counselor, you're going to have a support group identified, you're going to head down and do a trip. Well, if they were going to do it this way, they probably wouldn't send you to Mexico. They'd have to put up or stand up a facility.
Yeah.
If they forced the treatment. I suspect a large group of guys would say, like, hey, get out of here, don't do that. But I also think a large group of guys would have a great benefit from it.
I think so as well. I think that's where the route where they should be going to is like, hey, you're a year out. Here's the treatment options that you can have. You'll go talk to somebody. You'll go get assessed. You'll get your blood taken, everything.
Yeah.
And then here are the treatments a la carte that you can go, and this will help you out. I mean, at least do that before they get out, and then they can continue on that treatment when they get out, but set up that foundation for them before they leave.
Well, don't forget TAPS too.
That's
the apex.
That needs to be moved to like the tier 1 treatment. If I
TAPS,
could go
for everybody listening, is what is it? The Transition Assistance Program.
Yeah.
It is. I'm not even going to.
I walked out.
I was required to be there for 2 days out of a week. It's how would you describe it? An explanation of the logistics of departing?
It's a check in the box for the military to be like, hey, we showed them how to write a resume. That could get them a middle management job at Walmart. They'll be good to go. Yeah,
you want to talk about a system that could be upgraded a little bit?
Oh, dude.
That's what I'm saying. So take TAPS, make it a month, make it I don't know. And again, to do that, where that conversation has to start.
Yeah.
At the fucking top, to change the bureaucracy of the military, to make that emphasis, to start shifting some of the focus to the cost. Because what I suspect is there will never be a lack of individuals who are willing to step their foot on the line. But do we have to break them to do that? That to me is the more important question. Can we find a better way to have them go through that journey of being willing to stand for what they believe in, going and standing for what they believe in, and then a healthy transition out of it? I think that's where we're failing catastrophically the people who are willing to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, and you also have to take this in perspective as well. Like, we haven't been in a war for 2 decades before.
Yeah, that's very true.
This is a first time for this to happen. I think I think this next year or these next following years, we're really going to see some repercussions, because you got to think this year is the 20-year anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of guys that have been signed up at 9/11 to fight the war, that stayed in for 20 years, who are now getting out. That's going to be starting a large number of people. And
that is true. They are going to be timing out.
which is why it's very important to do this, to start talking about this, because I don't think we're not even close to the apex of dudes getting out that have been serving in the past 2 years, and to see the repercussions of what happens. I mean, you know, as tragic as it is, like, we both experienced friends who have killed themselves over the past year, more than
statistically higher than pretty much any other cohort or group. I mean, I tell people, and I try to be honest about my experiences. You know, I feel at a deep level, if you touch war, it'll touch you back.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to be bad. It can give you, again, I look at my life driving here today. I say it almost every day. I'm like, fuck, this is such a beautiful place to live. I have so much appreciation for the things that are around me. And don't get me wrong, I can be an asshole and lose that appreciation in my moments where I fall short of myself. But I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think once that optic shifts in your head, it's tough to not use that going forward. Much like critical thinking or logic, once you understand the value of that, you can just apply it to everything else in the rest of your life, because why wouldn't you? And
it's just getting guys to that point, to get to that point where they do understand the value of that, and like really appreciate what they have. I think it's hard for guys when they get out because they're frustrated. You know, you just spent 2 decades of your life. Some guys are in more than, they're in the military more than they've been alive, in their life, right? So that is their identity. They get out, their purpose is gone, their identity is gone. Their peers are gone. They probably geographically separate often. Yep. A lot of guys end up isolating too. And this is a huge thing right here, which most guys will not ask for help or reach out, because they are like, I don't deserve it. That person over there does. I don't have it. Which goes back to our origin point of care about the person to your left and right. And I don't know how to fix that, because again, that is what makes the community able to do the things that they're asked to do at an incredibly high level. Yeah, it's what's bred into us. Fuck. Yeah. Have we solved anything? I don't know. I don't think so. Damn it. Again, I could talk about this stuff all day, but it sucks because I bump my head up against, I don't have any solutions or answers. I have more questions than answers every time that I sit down and talk with somebody about this. I don't think we're going to have an answer, but I think we're part of the solution just by talking about it. That's what makes me feel better, of like, okay, at least this is what I can contribute right now, is I can tell you exactly what I went through or exactly how I'm feeling, and I'll be open and honest about it. Like, I don't care. Be vulnerable, let that ego go. And that's the other thing that Ibogaine does, is it helps you get rid of that ego a little bit. How does it do that? I've heard a lot of people say that. I'm confused by the mechanism. It's just so confronting that you have to absorb the lesson. I don't know. Some guys can describe it better than I can. It's just it gets rid of the armor that you're like, no, I'm not going to let you in, or I'm not going to talk about this because I don't want to make myself vulnerable. Like, I don't care. After I was like, dude, I'll tell you everything. You know? And I do it for the purpose of helping you. Like, if it's going to help you, then great. What would you tell your kids if they wanted to join the military? They both they do. So my oldest son right now, he's going to turn 21. He's a junior in college. Just super intelligent. Does not have any of my genetics. He's got a degree in chemistry. He does not need to be in the military, right? He's already self-selected out. Yeah, exactly. It's, like, dude, you need to go take that understanding of the shit you're learning elsewhere, because the military is not going to utilize you to the degree you want them to. And that's what that's the first thing I told him. I was like, dude, why would you take like 10 steps back and go into the military? But he's like, I want to serve. Like, I don't. Imagine trying to talk yourself out of it when you were younger. Exactly. And I won't talk him out of it. I'm like, if that's the decision you want to make, I will fully support you. The only thing I told him is, like, if you do make that decision, then I want to go with you, and we're going to have a plan. Like, I'm going to call people. We're going to make sure whatever route you want to take in the military is the route that gets done. Because as you know, if you don't do that, you could get sent anywhere.
Are you trying to say that recruiters won't tell you the 100% truth? I feel like you're trying to say that they might have a certain allotment of billets that they need to fill.
And they'll say anything or do anything to fill those allotments.
That hasn't been my experience. I've never met somebody who was told something by a recruiter that wasn't true.
I don't think I've ever heard the recruiter fucked me. Ever.
It could be the oldest tale in time when it comes to military service.
That used to be the only response. Like, how'd you end up here? My recruiter fucked me. And then my youngest son wants to be a SEAL. I mean, that kid has grown up in the teams. You know, I would take him from when he was a baby all the way, you know, to when I retired into the teams. He'd hang out in the team rooms. I mean, that's all he really knows. And that's what in his mind, he's like, that's what I'm going to do. But again, I'm like, that's your decision. And he's only, he's going to be 11. So he's getting to that age where it's like.
I knew at that age.
Yeah. But I told him, I was like, dude, you know, it's easier to say it than do it. Yeah. I was like, so if that's the choice you want to make, then that's going to be on you. I'm not going to, you know, be here to motivate you or be like, hey, do this and that. I'm like, you got to do it on your own. I mean, I'll if you make a decision, I will help you, but that's your decision, not mine. Don't do it just because I was in the military.
Yeah, that's definitely the wrong motivation, especially if you want to be a legacy team guy. That's a tough row to hoe.
Oh yeah. Well, especially if you have my last name.
It's slightly recognizable inside
the
community,
a little bit,
perhaps more than others.
By the time he joins, hopefully it'll be distant.
Yeah, no, I asked that more from now your own understanding of, again, you touch war, it touches you back, and who knows how long what do you even call it at this point? The current conflict. Yeah, somebody asked me the other day about my thoughts on Biden ending the forever war, and I was looking at exactly what he said, and he was referencing moving the troops out of Afghanistan. I did a little research, and like U.S. Special Operations is in 140 countries.
Yeah. So
-1 from that, I believe, carry the one is 139. That forever war, I think, is still ongoing. I don't even know what to call it.
I don't either. I when I hear forever war, the only two places which I think people are talking about is Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And me and like
that's not at all even remotely.
There's so many other places.
Yeah.
Where we are in conflict right now, which. Maybe you don't know about, and maybe it's better that you don't know about it. So that way you can't sit here and bitch and complain at home.
And maybe it is forever. I mean, I don't know, and nor do I really know the level. To me, when I think of warfare, my only lens is the community. So there's Vietnam, a little bit Panama, a couple guys in Grenada, a couple guys in Somalia. But it's those big conflicts. I mean, who knows what the U.S. was doing behind the scenes in between all those massive conflicts as well. Maybe it has been a lot more. I mean, from a sustained like U.S. military, I'd say for sure 20. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to call it, and I don't think that pulling the troops out of Afghanistan ends it in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's not ending the war. I do agree with the call.
I do too. That's actually how I answered. Why not treat Afghanistan like these other countries that we have a presence in?
Exactly.
And they're they're going to lead the support. And there's a little group of people called contractors that are going to be there.
Yep. It's not like we're pulling out and that's it. Like. Let's see what happens. We're going to have eyes on it. We're going to have people there. But I do think pulling the troops out of there, it's like, what are we doing over there?
Holding ground.
Holding ground.
Which last I checked is a strategy in Afghanistan. There was a country that tried it before us and many that tried it before them. Didn't go their way.
Well, it's history teaches us,
Well, fortunately, we're fast learners. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that he's pulling the troops out.
So back to what I was asking, the reason I asked that is, again, who knows how long it's going to go, but knowing the impact it had on you, I was wondering if it would change how you would, or if it would make you more concerned about your son wanting to follow down that path, because from firsthand experience what that touch in both directions looks like.
Yeah, of course I'll be concerned. I mean, I'll have my natural parent concerns. I don't want anything to happen to my child or them to be hurt in any way, but also...
They have to live their life too.
Hey man, you got to cut that cord and let them go. And that's the beauty of being a parent too, is going through that journey with your kids and then cutting that cord. Just like my oldest son, for example, he's been in college 3 years. Never once have I discussed military with him or like, hey, you thought, that's because I'm not going to push that on him. He came to me on his own and was like, hey, I want to join.
What does he want to do?
He wants to go in the Army.
As a chemist?
Yeah.
I love this dude.
Yeah.
What's he? Is he going to make bioweapons? God damn it, Eddie.
There we go. Yeah. I'm like, go do that for 4 years, then come back and work for me.
I can actually, though, see it from let me tell you how many chemistry classes I took. The last one I think I took was in 95. Probably got an F in high school. But I would imagine if you progress to higher education with that, it's a very heady between the ears task.
Dude.
I might want to go shoot a mortar or two as well, or just run around with a ruck. Like, actually, now it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Going into the Army to be a chemist, though, no.
Yeah. It's what he's thinking about doing right now. You know, it's like, this is the route. But that again, I'm like, well, if you do make that decision, let's go see. Let's go talk to some people, and then maybe there's a better route, maybe there's not. You know, I had a buddy who visited me last week. He came down, good friend of mine. He's at the command that you were at, and my oldest son told him, like, I want to join. He was like, why are you going into the Army? He's like, Air Force. Go to be in the Air Force. You know, they have the nicest stuff. They go, you know, they have the
I wish
bases.
I could say that wasn't true.
It definitely is true.
It's 100% true. God damn it. Just go get food on a Navy base and then go get food on an Army base. That actually may be the best tour that you could do with young kids.
Exactly.
We're just going to visit the chow halls. You guys tell me which food you like.
Yeah. What's your rating here?
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you right now the Air Force is going to be at the top of the heap every time.
Oh, dude, I was stationed at so when we deployed to the Cree in Dubai.
Was that crisis response element?
Crisis response element.
I just pulled that shit right out of my hat.
So badass. We deployed there, and so we were supposed to deploy to Yemen. My platoon was, and Yemen literally got pulled out of Yemen a week before we deployed. So they had no place for our platoon to go. So they're like, okay, you guys will just go to the Cree, and we'll figure out what to do with you there. They didn't even have room for us on the base at Sassanach or wherever that place is. So we got stuck on an Air Force base, just my platoon, in GP tents for about a couple weeks until we made friends with a bunch of the pilots and offered to, like, hey, our JTACs will give you classes, and then vice versa. And they're like, oh, why are you guys sleeping in the tents? They gave us barracks rooms, and then before we knew it, dude, it was the best I've ever lived on a deployment. I mean, my Wi-Fi was faster than in the States. I had they had CrossFit gyms, regular gyms with instructors and coaches. I mean, it was crazy. And
they're living their best life.
They are, and I don't hate them for it. I'm like, good on you.
A portion of me hates them for it.
While I was in, I was like, fuck you guys.
While you were in a GP tent, you're like, I fucking hate you for this, but I can appreciate it too.
Yeah, now I'm like, you guys are, definitely smart.
It's an interesting journey for sure.
It is.
How long did it take you to write your book? You can swing that thing over if you want to. It's up to you. There you go.
There we go.
It might chase you down though.
I keep on hitting it on my hand gestures.
I thought you were just about to say you were giving it a hand job. I was like, whoa, we are going deep.
That's in the next 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it probably took me, let's think, I probably started it last March or April. It wasn't too long after we did our podcast.
Because we touched on the fact that, no, you said it was coming, but then we left it as broad as possible.
Yeah, like I hadn't even started on it. It was just like.
Oh, I thought you were writing it that time.
No, I had made the decision to write the book. And then once, I think around April is when we full on, actually right when quarantine, all that stuff kicked in, which
probably
was
a good time to
a
write
blessing.
A book.
I was like, this is forcing me to, I'm inside, I might as well just sit there and hammer away at this book. It took me, I was done by 6 months, 6 or 7 months. And that's real quick, but it's because I was cooped up in the house.
Yeah.
And it just gave me all the time in the world to work on it. And that was my main focus. I wasn't really trying to do anything else. I just wanted to get that done.
Did you do it sequentially?
Like as far as
chapter 1 through? Or did you kind of just write as you were inspired to write about whatever time period it would be?
I figured out a format for it. So I talked with the publisher and was like, okay, this is what I want to do before. So it sort of starts off with me getting locked up the first day of like going to the brig and then going to the cell. And then it's me thinking back to like, how did I get here? And then just boom, sequentially getting me back to that point and then forward
Yeah. Your publisher sent me the manuscript. No way in hell I was getting through that entire thing before we sat down. It was good to be able to look through all the topics and read some of the chapters. I get hit up about writing a book. It's not in me to do it. And that's what I was going to ask you. For you, I think you probably have the ability to tell your version, whereas I would have the ability to tell stories that have been told by other people. You know what I mean? Not unique in any stretch. But why'd you decide, or when did you decide you were actually going to write it?
Not too long after, probably right around my retirement. Not too long before the retirement. I was going through, a whirlwind of shit during that time. But, I had talked to my friend Bernie Carrick and a couple other people, and they're like, listen, because I didn't want to write the book. I was like, this is what made writing the book so hard too. And another factor is, as you know, growing up, it's like quiet professional. I was one of the guys in the teams that was like, dude, fuck writing books. Like, you shouldn't write a book. And that's still with me. So making the decision to write the book was difficult, but enough people were like, listen, if you don't write it and tell your side, somebody will come out with a book, and it's not going to be your version. It's going to be whatever they got. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. But then as I was writing the book, I had to deal with that conflict as well. I mean, I must have called friends all the time, like, dude, and almost quit writing the book a couple times. And that was, my wife she was a rock the whole time. She's like, listen, this is for a purpose. Like, you're not just, because in my mind, I'm like, and I refuse to write about, me and my publisher had disagreements, He's a great guy, but I think he came into it like, another SEAL book. We'll just slap a trident on it and blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
it's a winning recipe.
It is.
In the modern era. Not saying it's a good recipe. It's a winning recipe.
Yeah. And I was definitely a pain in his ass. I was like, nope, I don't want any tridents on it. I don't want it to be, this is about what happened, over the past 2 years. And then the main focus of this book is, the heroes of the story, which is my wife and my brother and everybody else who got behind me, and like the stuff they did to get me out of, prison, and then to get me through the trial. That's what I wanted to focus on, and my faith and how that got me through. Obviously, as I started writing the book, my writer's like, hey, you got to like give some perspective, on some deployments or whatever. So, I mean, I do, there's talk about the Mosul deployment for sure, to give the, context for the trial. And then I briefly cover a little bit of some deployments before, but there's always like a lesson learned if I tell something like, this is why I'm telling this. But I try to stay away from the whole like, there I was and this, blah, blah, blah. I think I mentioned buds in one sentence in that book, which, I'm like, yep, I went and was just as cold as wet as every other frogman.
I went like many other have before me in the 70 plus years they've been doing this training. And for some reason, we were still using the same goddamn tools.
Yep. It's pretty simple and really it works.
Yeah.
But, it was, I think that was one of the main factors too, which I was having a hard time writing the book, just because it went against my principles, principles that I came up with in the teams. And I had to just overcome that. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but.
What was the hardest chapter for you to write?
The hardest one, probably, I think the hardest one for me to hear is my kids.
Yeah, or not necessarily to write, but just to work through what, the hardest phase of time in the book. Because again, there's a lot of chapters in that thing.
The trial for sure, like all the trial, and then everything that happened before the trial was definitely the hardest for me, because I hadn't unpacked all of the shit that they had done. It's crazy. It's like, I did a podcast with Sean Ryan, and that thing was like 5 hours. I didn't even cover, half the stuff, because there's so much. And that was the difficult, was like trying to pack everything into there. But it was hard to go back through that. And that's what brought up a lot of the anger. A lot, I was pissed. I was, and I had been shoving that thing, all my feelings down, and I had to during the trial and all that. Like, I had to remain stoic and just like not show any emotion, because that's what I was told by my lawyers. But also, it's, what are you going to do at that point when the media and everything is constantly filming you and putting your picture out? Like, if I let my emotions get the better of me that time, it would have cost me my life. I would have, that
would have been the highlight reel.
Yeah. So I was just constantly shoving everything down and packing it away. So when I had to unpack all that, that was super difficult, just to be able to deal with those emotions. But again, it's also a blessing too, because it helped me move forward.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
and that
it was
difficulty
very therapeutic.
Of unpacking. That's a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's a fuck. I mean, I don't think there's any way necessarily to describe it. Do you think you're in a better place with it now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not fully like, I'm definitely in a better place. I'll have my days where I'll be on a run or something, and I'll just start thinking about it, and I'm like, I can feel myself getting angry about it. But that's the growth, is like, I'm aware, like, okay, I'm doing this to myself again. Like, there's no reason to get this angry, or let's move past this. So that's I'm definitely in a better place, for sure. It was, I couldn't even talk about it. Even when I came on your show, that was the first one I did. Yeah. Dude, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I literally was just like,
I still don't. So
yeah,
you're a step ahead of me.
But like, even being able to describe I was just like, okay, like, I'm going to talk about it. But now I can, I broke it down to, and I did a lot of thinking over it, and it's funny. There's other, obviously there's a podcast out. Apple did one.
I was going to ask you about this, because I've listened to the episodes, and he talked directly to you. And I actually reached out to, I believe his name is Dan, right?
Dan Taberski.
I reached out to him and I said, I want to have you come on, and I want to talk about your experience talking to the guys. I almost don't even care about the story. Yeah. I want to talk about, because he was saying that he had talked with about 50 guys. I'm like, okay, that's what I want to talk about. I want to know how you feel after interfacing with them. If I'm being totally honest, the sound bites, and I have to imagine they have hours upon probably tens of hours, if not hundreds of hours. Yeah. If they did talk with 50 people, the sound bites that they have chosen, and I'm not saying that the people didn't say these things, but they are not representing the SEAL teams and SEAL individuals in the manner that I would hope that they were. There's some guys on there that sound like fucking idiots, and they make team guys sound like fucking idiots that are non-thinking robots that just, I'm out hunting and I'm a wolf. And it's like, dude, you are a soldier in a fucking uniform. You're not a wolf. You had a professional job, and I hope that you can get past that at some point, because if you're not in anymore, what are you going to do now? And if you are in right now, maybe go sit down and talk with somebody. And I'm not making any judgment of that individual, because I don't know who that individual is. Yeah. But it's not who, in my experience, those weren't the most effective team guys. They weren't the best problem solvers. No. They weren't the best on target.
Well, and you got to think this too. So they came to us early on last year, Dan Taberski and Apple, whatever.
And he said he would do it, by the way, but he wanted to do it remotely. So I was just like, listen, man, there's no pressing in time. I want to sit down with somebody like that face to face.
Oh, I would. I think it would be a great conversation with him.
And I said it, like I said, it's almost not even about the podcast itself. I want to talk to him about his interactions with people.
What his perception is. Yes. What he got out of it. Yeah.
That's what I'm more interested in.
I'm definitely interested in that too, like thinking, what his thoughts are. But I mean, I knew when we signed up for this, so they had called us multiple times, and we were like, hell no at first, we don't, obviously Apple, whatever, we're like, we don't want you putting your own spin on this.
Apple, heard about you once, no big deal.
But
waiting for a larger media company to get behind this.
There's got to be somebody bigger. Yeah. But they, after talking to them, we finally were like, okay, and we took it on just like we did the 60 Minutes interview. We're like, dude, they could make this to be anything. They could sway this one way or the other, but we have nothing to hide. Like, we'll do it. Like, here it is. We actually are the ones who gave them all the trial transcripts, because the Navy refused to talk to them about any of that. So we gave them everything, but what we told them is like, listen, we're entrusting you. Like, here's everything, and we just want, all we're asking you is do your due diligence. Like, don't just.
You're out of your fucking mind.
At
the end of the day, they have a product to sell.
Yeah, I know, and so that's what I was going to get to next with the like sound bites that they're choosing and everything.
They're horrendous.
I know
some of them.
Yeah, they're making it as dramatic as possible, right? So
yeah.
The last episode, my brother, dude, that dude never cusses that much ever. You would have thought you were listening to a Quentin Tarantino movie when they was interviewing him, and those were, I mean, they talked to him for 6 hours, and those are the sound bites they chose. And it's the same with every other guy I think they interviewed. They're choosing these to call, to make it more dramatic. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't sound, some of these guys, it doesn't make the NSW look good. And
well, I have a huge issue with the wolf, sheepdog, sheep analogy. It drives me nuts because, in my opinion at least, and I actually went to Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's house and did a podcast with him.
I listened to it.
And so you have an understanding of how I feel about it. To me, it's reversed. The sheep are far more dangerous. Like a wolf, like, cool, I'll put a collar on that wolf and keep track of you, and if I need to, like, we can handle that. But the sheep, having them be so many and have so much power if they can be manipulated or ebb and flow.
Oh, yeah. If they all decide to follow one person, that's strength right there.
And then the sheepdog is, I get the analogy, but it's also the individual that is the most susceptible to being a charlatan, to being a fraud standing in front of everybody, because you can wear the right clothes and you can say the right things and you can be totally full of shit. And you know who pays attention to you? All the sheep.
Yep.
To me, I'm not concerned with the wolf, and I hate that fucking analogy because it makes it sound so simple. I'm far more concerned about people who accept everything at face value, no critical thinking, no logic. That's sure. The danger to me.
I mean, I think we've seen that in the past year.
Yeah, but then you have a SEAL current, or whatever he may be, whatever his military status is. I'm fucking out there hunting, and it's like, God damn it, dude! Could you please find a more polished way to talk about it? Like, if you want to feel that way, I'm trying to do my best not to have any judgment of it, because let me tell you why. If you went back over all the podcasts I've ever done with a little set of editing snippets, holy shit, you could have some stuff coming out of my mouth as well. So I get it. But I'm also very cautious when I say things like that, because I feel the burden of, I remember where I came from, and like I said, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it wasn't those experiences, and I feel that burden, and I want to portray it in the best light.
It's like what we talked about the first podcast, is the weight on your shoulders. You're still representing the community, even though you're out.
Whether you want to or not.
You will always be known as Navy SEAL Andy Stump. I'll always be known as Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher. I mean, even I was talking about this to somebody the other day. I was like, dude, it doesn't matter. Like, you will always be presented as SEAL.
Within the first paragraph, if not the first sentence.
And I was like, it doesn't matter what you do after you get out. I mean, you look at Kim, astronaut, doctor, PhD. Anything that's written about him, it's Navy SEAL, astronaut, doctor.
Yeah.
That gets put in front of
comma
everything.
Underachiever.
Yeah. Do better.
That guy makes me feel like shit.
Oh, dude, I don't.
Bitch.
I just like to think he has no life.
He probably has just. Yeah, he's probably like the unicorn of like the perfect.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like that guy. I mean, what he's done is awesome.
Yeah, I've listened to, and that's why I reached out to Dan. I really wanted to sit down and just talk about the back and forth, the questions that you're at. What like, hey man, like, what's your overall? You've talked to 50, which by the way is still a small sample size in comparative.
Oh, big time.
And then maybe he could get a hold of some of the older UDT, and then of course they are targeting that series around what happened with you. So less likely that they're going to talk to the older UDT or the Vietnam era. You know what I mean? There's a huge spectrum of people that he could talk to, and I actually think, because I know people through that spectrum, it's a wildly different and evolving community. It's not the same as it was.
Oh yeah, generationally, like you can go back, every 10 years, the community is going to be different generationally.
And light speed and light years ahead of, I think, where it was that generation before, from a tactics, from a weapon perspective, from manning, even I mean, obviously there's weeds in every lawn, but even from the individuals and their capability level, I feel like they continue to level up forward, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sit down with him.
I hope so. I think that would be an awesome podcast, is, just to be able to hear his perspective after talking to these guys. It's the podcast, after listening to the first 3 episodes, is exactly how I thought it was going to come out. I'm just like, okay, you know, they're dramatizing it and making it like.
And I don't blame them. And
No.
for clarity, I don't blame them for doing that because
me
that's what they signed up to do. And I hope that was at least honest. They were honest with people about what they were trying to do. But I also hope people can intuitively understand there's a difference between an edited and produced 40 to 50 minute piece and you and I sitting down and talking until we get fucking tired of talking with each other.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference because as of so far on this will be the 178th episode, I have edited 0.
Yeah, which
It's
is
just
awesome.
straight through. Like me saying dumb shit, oh, it's in there.
Yeah.
Other people saying dumb shit, it's in there.
It's the most honest thing you can do. Like there's no, you're not hiding anything. You're like,
Well, it's a different product.
Yeah.
It's a different experience, and I hope people can tell that you can really cherry pick when it comes to those things.
oh, well, that's what the media does.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the mainstream media, that's all it is just cherry picking comments and then gaslighting the other side. You know, oh, look what they did here. And you're like, all right, dude, like give it a rest.
I can barely tolerate either turning the channel to either side of the aisle or clicking on the app to either side of the aisle.
I don't.
I have a hard, I mean, but then I feel like, well, shit, don't I have some obligation to at least stay slightly informed? Like, did the aliens land? I'm checking in like once a week. I'm like, are they here yet? No. Okay,
just
we're
wait
still
for-
just doing with the sightings.
I'll wait for Joe Rogan to come out and tell me the aliens land.
He probably would be the first person to tell.
I would.
He's on that fucking case. He's
Oh,
deep.
I know. Yeah, he's all over it.
Yeah.
I mean, I gave up watching the media, you know, that was a long time ago, but now for sure, I think it's just a dangerous weapon in our country that's being used, and it's there to divide us.
It's an interesting description of that medium as a weapon because it's targeted. Mm-hmm. I don't even want to get into the definition of what the truth is because depending on who you ask, you might get a different answer. But it has a desired end state, and it's almost palpable at this point. But I worry that people they can't feel that. You know, again, no judgment, but I can almost physically feel the messaging that they're trying to get across, and I don't know where that leads either.
I don't either because I think, like you said, if you can feel it, you can see it. Your eyes are open. You're like, I know exactly what they're trying to do here, but the problem is the sheep. Their eyes aren't open. They're not seeing it, so they're like, whatever CNN or whatever Fox puts out is like, that's God talking to you, and they're like, this is what's going on. When in reality, it's like all they're trying to do is get you to hate the other side in some form or fashion. And it's like, dude, when did we stop? At what point did we stop being able to agree to disagree? You know,
It seems like rather relatively recently.
Yeah, I think it's gotten a lot worse
Within our
recently, for sure.
lifetime, I would say.
Yeah, like I don't understand where this, like, just because I don't agree with you on some things doesn't mean we can't be like friends. But it's to a point now where it's like, oh, you know, you're for this, well then fuck you, you know, like you're on the other side. And it's like, what side are you talking about? I thought we all live in America, you know. I mean, my neighbor where I live now, he's a Biden, you know. It was funny, we during the elections, you know, we had a Trump sign out in front of our lawn, and then he came out, put the Biden sign out, and we were just laughing, like, and I have like awesome conversations with that guy. We have cigars and whiskey every once in a while, and we talk about, you know, the different topics, and we do come, you know, there's stuff that we don't agree on, but guess what?
You leave as neighbors.
We're still buddies.
Yeah.
Weird. Like, I don't hate him.
There's very few people I actually hate. But I will say this, the ones I do, I fucking hate.
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm like, dude, if I hate you, it's, yeah.
You know what I found, though? Most of the people that I hate, I'm not even a blip on their radar. It's me carrying that bullshit.
Yeah.
I've tried, present tense, I'm trying to continue to let go of a lot of those things because, like I just said, the hatred that I carry, most of the time, they don't even realize that I'm like,
no, it's just
and
hurting
if
you.
they did, they probably would say, dude, I'm fucking sorry. Like, I didn't mean to do that. And I'm sure people feel that way. I mean, trust me, I'm not a fucking perfect human being. But yeah, I don't, well, I can't say never intentionally fuck somebody over, but, but what I will say is I hope that I haven't done anything to anybody who's still harboring it now, because that certainly wasn't my intention. I'm just an imperfect person, and I'm trying my best to grow as a human being in my 40s, Eddie.
Well, adulting. That's
Trying.
I'm trying. Well, so am I. Believe me.
Yeah.
It's a struggle, but And I would say, like, yeah, letting go of hate is the best thing to do, but it is a difficult thing, especially if the person that you dislike is still doing stuff and you're like, bro, like you're trying to let it go. And you're like, come on, man. Like,
I was going to say, where do you land on your feelings towards the people that were testifying against you? Because that's got to be a journey as well.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I'm still dealing with that stuff, but like, I'm trying to think of I'm fucking pissed at them. Like, if I think about all the stuff that they did, yes. I mean, I'm naturally just like, but I honestly, like, they did what they did. They're gonna have to live with their consequences. And this is, I get asked that too, like, oh, what will you do if you see one of those guys or whatever? And I'm like, there's nothing more I can do to those guys that they haven't done to themselves. I'm like, they went to trial, lied on the stand, got caught lying on the stand. I mean, blatantly. And then now they have to live with that the rest of their lives. Like, I didn't put them in that position. They made that choice. I mean, I can't imagine what that feels like. So I was like, there's nothing more than I can do to them. I'm sure it's weighing on them big time. And I hope they get help for it. I mean, I don't want them to, I don't want anything bad to happen to them.
Don't lie to me.
by anybody else's hands. Yeah, it's
It's
but
tough.
that's
It's-
no, it
that's
is.
one of the
And
toughest
that's where
things
I'm
I've
at,
ever
man.
put down.
Yeah, it's I still deal with it. But as far like this is what's hard to deal with, man, is the obviously I still have, guys from the community still call me. I still talk to plenty of people. I mean, even still to this day, they have Rosenblum, who was the Commodore during my thing, and Greg Miller, who's one of the they're teaching ethics and morality to all the LPO courses as we speak, and they have a whole day on just bashing me. So guys will call me from going to that course and be like, dude, they literally just spend the whole day like, he's guilty. He was guilty. He got away with it. And that's where it's hard for me to be like, dude, like, let it go. But it's hard for me to, as they continue to do this, for me to let it go as well. It's like, oh, okay. And that's been a struggle. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
It's not as, bad anymore. I definitely am not like, what the fuck? But, it's one of those things I just got to work on and deal with. That's what I think is the most difficult thing for me right now.
Was the book a chance for you to get the record out there straight for you as well? I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about, so the trial was interesting, right? And this is actually how you and I first linked up, because I think somebody asked me a question about it. I was like, I don't fucking know,
Yeah, I wasn't there.
I can't say anything about it. The trial, it seems like a lot of the details were, I don't know if guarded is the right word, because again, I was living here while you were going through that. So it's not like I was in the courthouse, near the courthouse, proximal to it at all. But it sounds like the book is your opportunity to shed some more light onto what happened behind those closed doors. Like you're saying, the transcripts that the military would not release. And that's, to me, I mean, I can't be the person that says that's wrong or right, but I'm always hesitant when somebody says, no, you can't see the raw data. To me, that's not generally something that occurs if you have a desire to be transparent, or you're concerned about how it might be portrayed. So,
yeah,
I mean, was the book that for you?
Yeah, the book was, a chance to tell my family side of what happened, give all the details that went on, and I understand that, that's my side of the story, that it's a biased side. But what I did, and this was funny, is like halfway through writing the book, I remember having conversations with my wife, and I was like, no one's going to believe this. No one's like, this shit is so crazy. Like, they're going to think I'm making this up. And so I decided at that point, I talked to my publisher, we're putting in, so each chapter, there's QR codes in the book, and you can go ahead and look at it. You yourself can see all the NCIS interviews, full on, not edited, the trial transcript, everything that we could physically put in there and show that we were like, here it is, we put in there. So I wrote the book. Obviously, it's my side, but I wrote it in a way, at the end, it's like, you can make your own decision.
Yeah.
What you think happened. There's no fluff in here. It's like, boom, 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 beginning to end. Here's everything that happened. But there is so many details that were not put out that term guarded is right, because it was guarded by the Navy. Like, they don't want those details to get out because it was obvious these dudes were lying. It was a clown show. It was an embarrassment, dude. It was one massive embarrassment for the Navy, which I get why they're like trying to block it from getting out. But the thing is, it happened, and it needs to be told. Like, so this mistake doesn't happen again. And that's another reason for the book. Like, they should take it as an after action. Like, hey, these are all the things that happened that were messed up, and you shouldn't be like, let's not do this to somebody else. Let's give people the due process. Just ask the right questions beforehand.
Yeah. People asked me after our first podcast, I think they thought that you and I had known each other. I'm like, no, I opened a hotel room door. I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm Andy. You're like, hello, I'm Eddie.
Boom. Put the headphones on and go.
And then I was trying to video it, and like the video shut off. That's why they said, I'm like, oh, good, we got red lights.
Yeah.
Different cameras. I could totally master this one. And people ask me all the time, what do you think happened? And my answer to this day is like, I don't know. I wasn't there. I've had some of the, I think it was one or two of the people that accused you reached out to me over social media. And I think their initial, I'm speaking for them slightly, I think, but they basically said, hey, you don't have all the story. And I said to them, like, listen, you can, if you want to come on and talk about your side of the story, I will allow you the opportunity to do that. And I'll talk with you in the same way that I did with Eddie, because I'm actually not sitting here today with you to try to figure out this is what happened in this order and this person was a liar. Like, people need to make up their decision for themselves.
They can. And that's another reason I wrote the book is, hey, here's my side. And if those guys, this is the problem with those dudes, because they, obviously I've had to deal with them a little bit in the past year with.
I was curious if you'd had any interactions with them at all.
Not face to face directly. It's always through some other, somebody else calling me and like, hey, they're trying to like put a kibosh on this or try to stop you from this. And I'm like, hey, nothing's stopping you guys from, go ahead. But this is the problem though for them is you had 2 years to tell your side. And then guess what? We went to a court martial where you got to persecute me and tell your side in front of a jury, which I had nothing to do with. And that jury found that I was innocent and that you were lying. So I don't know where else, what else do I have to do to be like, this is, what happened to the truth. I get it. It got so screwed up because of the media and, the president's involvement, and just became like this huge show. But the truth's in that mess somewhere. Yeah. And this is my side, and here it is. Yeah,
and I think that you can navigate through the bullshit by sitting down and having conversations, which is why, and I don't even remember their names, to be honest. But I'm like, listen, like, if you want to sit down and talk, like, we can sit down and talk. But in sitting down and talking, though, there's questions. There's you know what I mean? There's difficult questions.
You have to answer difficult questions, just like I've had to answer. It's not. I'll tell you the hardest thing I did was interview with 60 Minutes. Those guys came in. They came to my house, and they had done their homework, and it was like a 3-hour interrogation under light, and they were definitely not. It was not comfortable.
They were targeted in their approach.
They came in with a definite bias. You could like feel it. It was palpable. But by the end, they spent 2 days with us, and they literally told me, they were like, you guys are nothing like we thought. And I'm like, what? That's the problem with the media. I'm like, you guys are getting like all your information about me through all these sources. I'm like, but you just spent 2 days with me. I was like, my kids are running. It's not a perfect house, but this is us, And I think that, they ended up doing they put out a good interview, and they got attacked for it.
Yeah.
It's political too. There's that divide because the president was, involved and helped me out. There's all that automatic divide that you'll never be able to cross that barrier. Well,
you'll be dealing with this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I wish I could not say that to you.
Oh, that's the truth.
It is. Because, again, you'll be Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher, and then there's going to be an asterisk. I have an asterisk. Mine's just, idiot. Yours is, high, very in the public specter.
What is it, the wine connoisseur for you?
Sommelier.
Sommelier, there you go.
Also known as a wine connoisseur. Yeah. That's tough, man. I think that the more you can talk, the more you can sit down, the more you can unpack stuff and have conversations, that's where you get to the truth. It's not in sound bites.
No.
It's not in short conversations, and it's certainly not from withholding information.
And that's the thing. So I had a SEAL Future Foundation. Every 2 weeks especially during the quarantine, they did a video chat with a bunch of guys that they wanted to get on for an hour, and usually one guy would go through like his transition or just what he's going through, and it depended. There were probably 20 SEALs on there listening in. It was a good way. It's a good thing. It's guys getting knowledge on how to get fixed, or just
the tactical guys helping the tactical guys.
Exactly. So they asked me to hey, do you want to give a talk? Because I was out, and this is in the midst of me writing the book, and they're like, just tell your side to team guys. And I was like, yes, that was like the only thing I wanted to do at the time. I was like, dude, I just want to talk to the guys and give them my side of the story. They're like, okay. They sent out the email and like, hey, Eddie will be talking next session. The Johnny Wilson, who was the head of SEAL Future Foundation, called me 2 days later and was like, bro, I'm now feeling what you're going through. And I was like, why? He's like, I literally just got called from the command, from high up SEALs, telling me do not let him talk, do not give him a voice, do not, and he was like, why? And they're like, just don't. So I was like, dude, it's cancel culture,
that's not how you that's not. So if you think somebody's ideas or their speech is bad, that's not how you do it.
Yeah. That's
you
not
actually
the right
bring
way.
it into the light, so it can be exposed and dissected and digested, and further investigated. You don't just cut it off and not give people the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, exactly. He ended up letting me speak. It had to be done sort of backdoorish, because I told him, I was like, dude, I don't want to put your foundation in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Just go ahead, forget about it. He was like, no, I want you to talk to some guys. So I ended up telling the side of the story to 15, 20 guys, and I had guys message me from that were like, dude, I was completely against you from what was being told to us, and now after hearing you, I'm sorry this happened to you, and that's, that was the purpose of it, is to here's my side, make your decision, what the command or whoever's telling you, and then you can hear my side of the story, and then critically think which one makes sense or what's going on. But that's the frustrating thing of what I have to deal with the rest of the time, is because it's not black and white. There's no, like you said, people are still asking what do you think?
They ask me all the time.
Yeah,
I'll get a ton of messages after this goes live next Monday, and they'll be like, "Oh, what do you think? You sat across from him face to face. What happened?" I'm like, "What?" I mean,
yeah, you're not going to know. I mean, and I put what happened exactly what happened in the book. It's the final chapter in the book. It's this is everything that happened that day.
What are your thoughts on the careers continuing for the people who accused you?
Oh, I think that's also very frustrating that they're allowed to continue in the Navy or in the NSW, and some of them even got promoted, for testifying against me. I think it doesn't leave a good standard for the rest of the people, because obviously everybody saw what happened, and then to let these guys continue to lead other men after what happened, it just sets a bad it's a bad example, and it's a double standard almost. I get. No, I don't get it. I don't get why they're still in, why they're still going forward. Especially the guys were in the pictures. Not that I want there's some of the guys, I don't want anybody to be from the beginning, I didn't want anybody to be punished like that. I was like, hey, this is all one big mess. Let's just get this over with. But for them to selectively punished anybody that came and testified for me. But then if you were testifying against me, they rewarded you. And that's the way I don't see how any way you can look at it. And I've tried to look at it objectively and be like, okay, maybe they're making these decisions for a purpose. It's literally like they punished anybody. They set out to be against me from the get-go. I mean, they put all their chips in what these guys were saying, their first initial accusations and whatever they told. They're like, all right, let's go after them. And then I think once evidence started coming out or stuff started coming out hey, maybe this isn't making sense, maybe what these guys are saying isn't true, they just doubled down and they were like, nope, just keep going. we're already on this road, and they're sort of using the never quit attitude in a different light. But it is what it is, man. I mean,
do you ever encounter people in your day-to-day life who recognize you and believe the worst things about you because of what they've heard?
no, I would never know if I did. No one has ever come up to me and said anything to me negative at all. I've had nothing but like positive stuff happen. I mean, I have people come up every once in a while and they'll recognize me, but everybody's very supportive. And yeah, I mean, the people that are, you know, the most things like you saw last time I was on, it's just the negative comments, which I don't read. It's like, whatever. That's your
pussy.
That's like your opinion, man.
Don't be a pussy. Get in there.
Be a man, read the comments.
Start with the YouTube ones. Get deep. Strap yourself into the chair and just Clockwork Orange your eyes
make
open.
A night of it.
Don't do it.
No, I was doing it. You know,
yeah.
You can't. I think it's human nature. You're just like, what the fuck? And
it's that separation of a keyboard of any kind and their ability to say things that you know. And I know that because I feel it in myself. I'm like, wow, I just wanted to escalate that really quickly. I'm just going to go ahead and put this phone away for right now.
Yeah.
It's not how I would behave in person. It's not how I'm going to behave online.
It amazes me just to think, like, I think of those people's headspace, like, where do you find the time to just, like, go after somebody? Like, I had, you know, I'm sure with you, like, every once in a while, I had a bunch of negative comments, but it's like you had to take the time out of your day to go on my profile, look up my name.
Very actively, yeah.
Actively, like, and then start putting down whatever thoughts you have on the matter, and, you know, they're negative. I'm like, what? Don't you have anything better to do? You know, but
some people do not, actually.
No, and that's what also amazes me is like the way people spend their time, and it's I think they should do a study on it in about 10 years after this whole social media thing. Hopefully, I don't know if it's going to keep going or dissipate.
Where does it keep going in 10 years?
I don't. Yeah.
At very different realities, depending on how it ends up going. The social media experiment, if you will. Fuck, it is. Like I said, I find myself trapped in it sometimes too, and it's just I got to put it down. I got to put it away. My rule is I don't say anything online that I wouldn't say in front of somebody's face.
Exactly.
Which is a tough one to hold sometimes, if I'm being honest. But
I think like we responded to one or two comments, you know, and that was we had it was like during last Christmas. It was a wife of a team guy that was over at her house, hung out my wife at Bible study. She posted on one of my wife's accounts, like, you're an embarrassment. It was after the Sean Ryan podcast. Like, you're embarrassing the community. And she, like, went after Andrea, like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. Like, just out of the blue, you know, and had no, and it's like, you know, and Andrea just snapshotted it and then posted it and was like, we don't, you know, I forget what she said, something real intelligent. I don't know what she does most of the
as they do.
Yeah. But I mean, that's other than that, we don't respond. I mean, that was definitely one of the things we're like, okay, you want to sound off?
It's tough. And if they catch you responding a couple times, they know that there's that interaction.
They got you.
They're occupying your time at the very least. It's almost better to say nothing, because I think if you show that front of just absorbing without any response, it'll eventually wane and they'll just target their machine gun of fucking hatred and anger towards somebody else.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. They have like this unlimited magazine capacity or this belt-fed anger and hate. It's like, what is that, an 800-round box you got there? It just never ends?
No. It's because they're miserable most of the time, I think.
Yeah.
They're just miserable people that want to make everybody else miserable, you know. And
I think there is a lot of that.
Yeah, especially now. Everybody's cooped up. Everybody's been cooped up for over a year.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is, man. I don't let it get to me anymore. That's another thing with the growth. It's like, great, man. Like, that's, you know, Big Lebowski. Like, that's like your opinion, man. Like,
it's like,
sweet.
Whatever your opinion is, man. God, that's such a great movie.
It is.
I've got a beverage here. What was he drinking? White Russians? God damn it.
Over the fucking line.
When does the book come out?
So we're shooting for June 15th.
Okay.
Yep. So we just got it back the other day from DOD. We're going to go to print this next week, and then I have to go do the audiobook.
Are you going to read it yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that's not really like getting a comfortable massage. That's going to be more like having a small hammer on your forehead.
Oh, exactly. It's so funny. My wife is so like, she's nervous about it because I had to read the book a bunch as my wife and I edited through it. And believe me, there was a lot of revisions to the book. As if I would have given out the first draft of the book, it would have sounded just like, one of those guys on the podcast, like fucking, I was, angry when I was writing. I'm like,
but that's good to work through that, right?
And yeah. So I kept on revising it. And then as my emotions got bad, I was like, nope, take this out. That's, don't put that in there. But as I'm reading it to Andrea, she's like, "You are so monotone when you read. There's no, what do you call it? Inflection and anything." But I figure, I can fake it for the week that I got to do it. I'll put on the.
You think you're gonna do it in a week? I'm guessing 2 at a minimum.
Bet.
I guess it's a sound booth with just your manual in front of you and just boom.
Yeah, boom. And they I heard it like, yeah, if you mess up, start over again. But I have, so the book, there's chapter, like a lot of other people have chapters as well. Andrea has chapters.
I was going to ask if she was going to narrate any.
Yeah, so she's going to narrate her. I want everybody to narrate their own chapter. So I have 3 people from my legal team have chapters in there. My brother, and then there are some team guys that are still in that have chapters, but they're
probably not available.
Yeah, and I understand.
Yep.
So I'll probably read theirs. But and there's a guy from the brig that I was in the brig with who gave his perspective on what he saw, how they were treating me.
Like he was a guard at the brig, or he was in the brig?
He was in the brig.
What'd he do?
What did he was in a biker, like a actual biker gang, and that's against Navy standards to be in a gang.
Yes, it is.
Yep. So they NCIS raided his house, kicked him out of the door at gunpoint and put him in prison. And he was in there with me for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Before trial, and then got found innocent at trial, let out. But hey, it's like, dude, what they do to some people's lives is pretty crazy, which is why we started the Pipe Hitter Foundation too, which is going real well.
Yeah. What is your, I mean, we talked about it briefly because you were just starting it actually when we first sat down.
We hadn't even had it approved when you and I sat down.
Yeah. So what's your vision for that?
So basically right now it's to help first responders, law enforcement, and active duty service members if they are being accused of something and they want legal help or advocacy. We also raise money for their legal funds. We do not provide lawyers. We're like, you got to get your own lawyer. We have a list of lawyers that we know are good dudes that we can give you, but we're not going to tell you which lawyer you can have. But we will provide legal fees or pay your legal fees, and then also our emergency relief funds for the family as they're going through that stressful time, like whatever they need. That's the purpose right now. And then, like I said, we're adding on the pillar of helping guys with the mental stress and just the mental toll it takes on you. Just much like coming out of the military in transition, going through something like that causes a toll as well. You're going to pay the price for the amount of stress that has. So we will, help out in that manner too, and give them direction on where to go to get help. So yeah, that's the key of it right now. And we've obviously this last year it was pretty difficult to raise money, but we did it where we could, and we helped out probably 3 SEALs, and then
who were accused,
who were accused, and then so we just help them pay for their legal funds, and then also
at a broad level without getting into details. How did it go for those 3?
So those 3, one I don't think nothing happened, and then the other 2 were already in the midst of being found guilty. They went through this same system, which there's nothing we can do at that point except like, hey, what do you need help with? And because they had been, I think their punishments were busted down, half pay taken away, and then being booted out at 16 years. It's like
probably with an other than honorable at best.
Yep. So you're setting that person up for failure right off the bat. And this is the other pillar that we're having too, is like the over punishment that goes on within the military. What we're seeing is you've guys mess up, because people do. Okay, you're punished on like 3 different levels. So Aaron Howard, we're helping him out, and we actually just had him on the podcast.
Why does that name ring a bell?
He was from the command. He got accused of catfishing.
I think he's reached out to me. Damn it. I was trying to have him on the podcast, and I think somehow we
He'd be a good one to have on.
Okay.
I definitely recommend having him on. He
I knew that name rang a bell.
Yeah, so he was accused of catfishing.
We need to talk about what catfishing is because I'm actually not 100% clear.
I'm not either. What I got. So this is I think what
Okay.
it is you impersonate somebody else to get somebody to send you nude pictures or
What kind of fucking world do we live in, Eddie?
Oh, dude, and that's why that's why we have no clue. We're like, catfish it is. We're like, what?
Yeah.
But that's what he was accused of. He went through this 2 years of just like, being at that command, but they would not. The command pretty much turned on him and were like, "You're done." He ended up going to court-martial, got found innocent of all of it, but they charged him with the same charge they charged me with, which is like the conduct unbecoming, just for showing up at the court-martial. And he got sentenced to a month in the brig. He got out of the brig, and the command took admin septum like that. So he doesn't have any of his medical benefits, doesn't have any. I mean, he'd been in it 16 years at that point. They just kicked him out with nothing. So this is where we stepped in, and we're like, hey, that's fucked up. Like, this is a human being who has a family and kids. No matter what you think of him as an operator or whatever else, like, put that aside. Like, this dude has to carry on with his life, and what you're setting him up for right now is putting a gun in his mouth and ending it because he's getting out with nothing, and that's where we step in and we're like, okay, we're going to raise money for you. I think he's got his stuff on appeal right now, trying to appeal some of it, but it's, his case had already gone down that path before we could step in and help out with like advocating, but we're doing what we can now to help him out. And that's...
Is there a chapter in your book that explains the difference between the military court system and the civilian court system?
Yeah, I think that's why I had my lawyers.
I was going to say, because that's
book.
actually, and I'm not an expert on it at all, but I know that there are massive differences between the two. And it's important to understand them in the context of the military punishment, what can be done, what can't be done, how it is viewed. And like I said, I'm not an expert on it, but if there's a chapter like that in the book, I think that would be really helpful for people to read, just to get an understanding of the UCMJ system.
Yeah, and I think, that's why my brother started the Pipe Hitter podcast as well, because that's our main thing is to get UCMJ reform. So they'll go over that, like the differences between civilian and the military justice system, where the cons are like the stuff in the military justice system that should be reformed, that is wrong, but it's because it's such an archaic system. They haven't figured it out how to like make it fair, I guess, in a way. It's the way it's built is just you're setting the person up for failure that's getting charged. It's because everybody that's either defending you or charging you, the judge, they all work for each other. So you're not getting a fair trial. Like, the defender is possibly going to work for the prosecution, next time, and they're all officers. So they don't want a bad eval. So, during my case, my JAG was nervous about calling the prosecution out for spying and doing all this stuff because he's like, oh, well, let's not do this. And I was like, dude, fuck that. I don't care what goes on your next eval. Like, this is my life.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with the system is it's not perfect. And I mean, no system is, but it definitely can be fixed. And I don't know the answer to it either. Like, I know some people are like, oh, put civilians in there, but I don't think that's the answer either. I couldn't imagine having a civilian jury on my trial that has never been to combat before.
That would be a layer of complexity for sure. You would have to probably spend a lot of time doing your best that you could, or your legal team, to try to educate them on that. And then it still would be largely lost.
It would. Yeah. And that's why I don't think that's the answer. But there has to be some reform done. And I don't know what the answer is either, man. I'm not going to sit here and tell you like, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
I just know that something does need to be done. There's enough people getting screwed over and then their lives are ruined just because you make a simple mistake in the military. And then it's like, yeah, not only are we kicking you out, we're fucking you up for the rest of your life. That needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's rough.
But it's, it's going good. We're helping, we're helping law enforcement too, especially this past year. It's been huge. So, we've had a lot of law enforcement people reach out. And so what we do is we have people reach out for grants. Once, I think we're moving it twice a month now, our board convenes and we go over each one, and we're very diligent about digging in. We have the people fill out the grants and give us as much information as possible. And then, if it's very vague, we're like, hey, we need more information than this if we're going to,
Yeah, for sure.
dive in.
Yeah, you don't want to get attached to something that ends up being a shitty cause.
Yeah, which is another, like, for the SEALs that we helped out, I was like, now you guys make the determination, because I'm already going to have I want to help them. You know?
Well, the best thing you probably could have done to help them was step back and let others make the decision. Even just from the optic alone, right? I mean, it's just, it'd be more precise for them, or more clear for them.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going good. We just raised it's like $18,000 for Aaron Howard and his family. So I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's funny, when I got out, I was like trying to find a purpose, and that is huge. That's a huge purpose for me. Is to help guys out. And it's still serving our community in some fashion.
Yeah, very much so.
And
speaking about your experiences or the things that you went through for your own personal growth.
Yeah.
Through that journey of growth, which it sounds like you've been on, started it not long after you and I sat down for that podcast, whether you wanted to or not. Maybe a little bit of it was crashing down on you. You're like,
Yeah.
Have you? I mean, I think I asked you this at the end of the first podcast we did about what would you have changed, if anything? And looking back now, some more time, more understanding of yourself. What would you have changed about the experience? Or not? That's not the correct way to phrase it. What would you have changed about you or your actions or where you were in that leadership position? That's a better way to say it.
Yeah, there you go. So as a whole, with the whole experience, I would not have changed anything as far as going through what I went through. Mm-hmm. That happened for a reason, and it's bigger than me. And God thrust that on us, and we're trying to make the best of it. So I wouldn't change that. But as far as personally myself as a leader, I would have definitely been more aware of, this is what emotional intelligence comes in, is like being sympathetic to the other guys a little bit, hearing their complaints out to a certain point.
Yeah.
All right. Like, I think, their complaints at the time, I could have dealt with them better. I still would have had the same outcome, same answer, like, suck it the fuck up, we're going out. But to be able to deal with it, not just say that, like, explain it in a more articulate and softer manner.
But even saying that, you still have to have boundaries, because the expectation for the battle space commander is that you're going to go and execute the mission in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely would have changed the way I would have presented hey, this is why we're going out every day.
Yeah.
Communicated a little bit more, for sure, on what the objective was, why we were going out. I definitely ended up assuming that everybody knew why we were going out every day, why we were doing this. And, when you assume, it makes an ass out of you and me.
Often.
Yeah.
In my own personal experience.
Yeah. So that's one of the things. And I mean, I get asked would you have changed things differently with it tactically, or like being as aggressive? No, I wouldn't have. And you talk to the other guys in my platoon, not the accusers, which I think everybody's so focused on these 4 dudes. There's 16 other dudes, and I'm telling you what, I've gotten reached out to since I've gotten out by them, because I wasn't able to talk to them the whole time I was in. I mean, they're like, I'm grateful for you making us go out every day, you making us do this. That gave me the experience I needed to move forward in this career. That's what fulfilled me. Also helped me out when I was going through this past year. And then I think that's all I would have. I mean, I definitely just my emotional intelligence, I wish would have been a little bit better during that time, for sure.
And that, I'm not an expert, but I think that's a change that the community could make at maybe even probably be better just to start earlier on, but certainly the leadership, make that a little bit more of a focus as well too, right? You could change, especially as the generations move through the community and you have the blending of the old guard and the new guard, however you want to phrase it. You know what I mean? It would help, I think, a little bit with that gelling. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, I know.
I come to a loss of words trying to describe how difficult it can be. I mean, I sit back And I wonder, does the community need to change? Should we change the training? I mean, what are your thoughts looking back? Do we need to change the training because of new generations of people coming in? Is the training sound because it stood the test of time? Or
by changing the training, though, I mean, all you can do is lower the standard.
Maybe. I mean, if you add
if we're talking about buds.
Yeah, but you could add some, emotional intelligence stuff in there, not necessarily lower the standard. Or maybe it's at the tail end, right? When you guys, or maybe it's an SQT or something, or you can make a leader, the LPO to chief to fill in the blank. You could make it that more of an emphasis to, like I said, bridge those gaps. But I mean, I feel largely detached from the community now because I've been out for almost 8 years, and I'm curious, what's it going to look like in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years? What changes are they going to have to make to accommodate for the changes in people?
Yeah, I mean but
because I'll hear the thing, millennials, like hear this all the time. I know some millennials who are some of the most selfless motherfuckers I've ever met in my life. Courageous defines the word of. I'm like, holy shit, I wasn't going to do that, And then there are others that live up to every ounce of the negative connotation of the term as well too. They are entitled. They're of the known universe. They sit in the center, and fuck. How do you manage both?
Yeah, and that was a difficult position I was in as the platoon. Like, I had both ends. Like, I mean, they were all from the same generation. I had dudes that were good to go, like you said, the most selfless dudes that were ready to just do whatever for each other. And then I had a handful of guys that were, nothing was ever good enough. They bitched about everything. They didn't. It was just a different attitude that I'd never had to really deal with before. And I told my master chief that at our exit interview. I was like, this was the most difficult thing I've done. And he was like, oh, the combat tour? And I'm like, no, dealing with this new generation, and that's what it is. I don't know how to handle it. And he had no answers for me either. He was like, yeah, like, this is...
Well, he's a generation removed as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for you, but for me, the combat aspect of it's not that hard.
No,
it's, you know what I mean.
Well, that's what we want.
Well, you're not out there like doing a Rubik's cube inside of a tumbling drying machine. Like, and again, it's another perhaps misconception that people have that like all of these situations are incredibly complex, and you're like redoing and defining tactics. And the reality is,
it's probably one of the most simpler things you can do.
I guess the number of potential options you have are unlimited. But I mean, half a dozen, really. Let's go left or right, forward or back. Maybe we're going to go to 45. Cover and move. High ground generally works since the day of sticks and stones. Flank your enemy. Don't get them. Like that. Those decisions aren't that hard. I think the human being, that management of human beings is...
Oh, that's a difficult one for sure.
Yeah. And as the battle space is evolving, because of course our enemy is paying attention to us as well. Like I just had Jack Carr on. He's talked about it perfectly. Like we've been playing poker and our enemy's been watching our hands as well. So they're... they have the ability to maneuver as well, and at the same time, we're changing as a society, but we want the people to be able to do the job. Like, I get so lost in it quickly as to the best way forward.
I don't get the new, not the new, but just as well as we've seen in the past, different administrations have cause different effects in the military. So, like right now, I don't get like the big. Concern or the big thing they're focusing on is diversity and
I'm fine with diversity, but not for the sake of diversity.
No,
I think the standard has to be the absolute thing that is held, and just saying, hey, we are going to force this upon you so we can say that we are diverse, that is idiotic to me.
Yeah, and I'm fine with like diversity as well, but to me, we're talking about the military, and we're talking, especially when we talk about NSW, you're talking about a combat unit that's goal is to go over there and defeat the enemy. How does being diverse make us stronger in that aspect? You know what I mean? We already have
Well, again,
females.
It doesn't if it's only for the sake of diversity.
Yeah,
if they're saying...
So some social experiment, then...
Yeah.
And that's what really frustrates me, from the outside now, seeing that. You're like, what is it? What are we doing? Like, are we trying to win the war, or are we trying to then...
Well, here's a better question. Do we know what we're doing? I mean, do we know... I mean, as a country, do we know where, if you want to define it as a social experiment, or... I mean, I've heard it described as many things, a lot of big sweeping changes with not a lot of history behind the impact that it's going to have, and you want to implement those. Do we actually know what we were doing, or are we throwing spitballs up against the wall to see what sticks?
I mean, the whole spitball against the wall, I think that's the way we've always done it. It's just like, oh, this works, this doesn't. I mean, that's how we do learn, and that's how we evolve. it's just, I guess, these decisions that are made.
I mean, diversity of ideas are great, and that's why you do a planning cycle. When you break up and everybody has their little focus and you come together and you do a mission planning cycle.
Yeah.
But then to say we are going to change the makeup of your community just to say that it has changed, I start having an issue with that. Again, will different backgrounds potentially help? I don't know, because what if those backgrounds can't, again, meet the standard? It always, to me, comes back to that objective standard. And
standard.
And I think for you and I, that's probably so concrete because we saw the physical expression of what happens when the standard isn't met. And again, once you see that optic, I don't think you can turn that off. Because to me, that's the most important currency, I would say, would be performance. Performance against the standard.
Yeah, and I mean, the standard is what it is, but I've seen it as an instructor lowered, when need be. And that's a sad part. Is like they will, I think at the time when I was right after you were, not right after, but not too long after you were, it was that the big push, like, hey, we need to grow the force. Grow the force was the big mission at the time.
We were catching the inklings of that as well when I was in second phase. The beauty of that program is, like, from a logistic perspective, you can only push so many people through. Even if you just throttle the front end, you're going to have a bottleneck along the way. And the curriculum works.
It does. You can't, and that's when I was there. It was like these people were constantly trying to change the curriculum. Like, hey, why is log PT 2 hours? Why isn't it just an hour? And I'm like, why are we, like, fucking with this? Like, it works. It's been proven. Why are we constantly trying to, like, then the whole Great Lakes thing, like, so much money was dumped into that. And when I was an instructor, I was, we were told each class, oh, this is the cream of the crop. Like, they've been through Great Lakes. They've done the psych testing. Like, no quitters.
What was the attrition rate?
Bro.
Historically accurate?
Same every time. It was like 5 minutes into the first phase, bing, bing, bing. And then it's the same outcome. And I'm like, why are we wasting all this money trying to figure out how to get more guys through? Just let the system or the process work. You're getting the guys that you need. And you're going to have your ones and twosies that don't belong, but because nothing's perfect. But I mean, the more people that you force through that training, the more of those onesie and twosies, you're going to get 5s and 6s, 7s and 8s that don't belong. And we're a very small community. And so if you have 7 or 8 people each class that really don't belong, they got through because there's too many students and not enough instructors, and maybe the standard was lowered a little bit. That's 2 or 3 years of that. That's a huge
cascading
outcome.
effects.
Yeah. It's and now I just don't get some of the what we're doing with this year the first transgender active duty SEAL came out on CNN.
I think so.
Yeah, I knew the guy. He was at Team 1, and I was like, he's in his dress blues, female dress blues now.
Yeah.
And doing like an hour-long interview, which had to be approved by Warcom. He just didn't go do that. And I'm like, what is the point of this? Like, how does this make NSW more effective on the battlefield? I get it. Like, oh, you're so progressive now. Like, we've got transgender active duty Navy SEALs, but
the problem is, unless you actually put your toes up on the line, you don't understand the importance of being able to do your job on the battlefield. And I don't fault people for that, because for them it's just a conceptual thing. So you know what I mean? It doesn't tug on them to the level that I think that would probably tug on us.
Yeah.
Because I look at that, and I don't care what people are or who they want. Like, live your fucking life. I think it's one of the most beautiful things of our country. Live your life. Can it be taken too far?
You do you.
Absolutely, it can be taken too far, but that's your choice to make when it comes to living your life. But how it has an impact on what it is that we're trying to protect has a huge importance to me.
Yeah, it affects me.
I can't say it means more to me because that's not fair, but it probably tugs on me a little bit harder because of the experience, and it's tough for me sometimes when talking with people because they don't have that, and it puts me in a difficult spot.
It is. It's a hard conversation to have, especially like with me and you. It's easier, but with somebody that doesn't have, like you just said, the background of being in the teams or going, doing that. It would be difficult for them to, like, why is this such a bad thing? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, what is the purpose?
Yeah.
What's the objective? It's not, I don't care if you want to, dress up, whatever, change sexes, do you, man. Like, I don't care. Like,
unless it negatively impacts performance against the standard.
Yeah, and that's
it's harsh to say that, And again, I do my best to understand my optic of the world versus most people's optic. I can understand how that comes across as rude or not crass, but just like, how could you possibly, be so blunt about it? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm never going to be able to change the way that I feel about that, because that standard is...
It's a principle.
Yeah.
It is. It's your principle, and it's mine too. It's what I grew up with and bred into me. The standard is the standard.
You ever sit back, and I know you've gotten off the news a little bit, but I'll assume you have some idea of what's going on in the U.S. And, division is a word that's thrown around a lot, or progressive policies are a word that's thrown around a lot. You ever sit back and just wonder whether or not what you went through was worth it? Like, what is it exactly that we, as a nation, or the people who went overseas,
fought for?
Like, is it all for naught? Or is it heading in that direction?
I think that's...
Like, I want people to be able to live their life to the absolute limit of what they want to be able to do. But I don't want them to live it at the point where they can rip the country apart.
Yeah. I think I saw something, I think a meme or something, that it was like, there's a large portion of this country that just wants to be left alone and do their thing. And there's a large portion of this country that doesn't want to leave you alone. That wants you to, like...
It's an interesting way to put it.
And I mean, that's the way, I live my life, is like, you do you. I don't do whatever you want. Just stay the fuck off my lawn. If it starts affecting me, then we got a problem, But other than that, I don't... It's America. Like, be free, do what you want to do. It is frustrating to see some of the decisions that are made, and then you're like, what the fuck? What was I doing? What were we doing over there? Yeah. And that more pertains to decisions that are made overseas right now, or like the strategic decisions. I think I definitely get frustrated with some of that. Like, what are we doing? Are we trying to win, or are we just trying to prolong this? But I don't think I wouldn't. Fighting for this country is definitely worth it. I mean, no matter what, and this is the thing. We'll get through this. We're America. We're gonna get through it. And this whole gaslighting thing of like, oh my gosh, everything is so horrible, like our country's getting torn apart. No, it's not. Go ahead and go over to these third world countries that we've been to. Like, those countries are torn apart. That's what it looks like. Now, that's not to say like...
There are small factions, I believe, of people in this country who are Americans who, for whatever reason, maybe they're angry about their life situation. Maybe it's just the way they live their life that they want to tear it apart. But I absolutely don't think that's the majority.
No,
but it is the majority of what is reported on.
Well, that's all. Yeah, that's all they're filming, is like these little factions and making them bigger than they are. All last year they were burning down cities, right, with all the riots and everything.
Still going on in some cities.
Yes, it is. It's still going on. But the main focus that everybody was, going nuts about was the Capitol. Like, they're right on that. Now, yeah, that was an embarrassment, and that was... I'm completely against...
Well, and you got to separate it into two groups. The people that were literally just there because they wanted to be seen and heard. Mm-hmm. And then the people who were like, oh, fuck it, let's just go storm the Capitol.
Yeah, the idiots.
Very different groups of people. One, I think they are completely protected in their right to do so because their assembly and speech, like, yeah, roger that. You're exercising your rights. You're being seen and heard. And the fuckwits who are like, let's just kick in the door of the Capitol building, like, negative. It's a fucking hard pass.
Exactly. But... the main focus was that, media, my gosh, look at this.
Hundreds of thousands of people were there not doing that.
Exactly. But then no one, it's like, what about all the cities that were burned down last year? Like, that was wrong too. That was just as wrong, if not even more wrong than storming the Capitol. I mean, I don't think they broken. I mean, one woman was killed, which is tragic. Yeah. But all the stuff that happened last year, I'm like, that's an embarrassment as well. Like, what is the purpose of you guys doing that?
We're putting on quite a show for the rest of the world.
It's
some popcorn being popped around, and people are just like, "Oh shit, season 2!
Yeah,
here we go."
Oh shit, it's riot season again. Yeah, it's I mean, I have faith in America. I have,
I do too, because I walk down, Main Street, Kalispell, and I talk to people, and the stuff that I see on the news is not replicated here. And yes, before people lose their shit, I realize it's not, the most diverse representation of American culture. I get it, but I also was just in Utah and Salt Lake and California with my dad, and I have the same conversations and actually, I don't know if I've ever encountered somebody in person that would be involved in those activities that I see on TV, and we can disagree and have conversations.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I have faith in the American people too. I'm not saying that it's going to be an easy road, but I have faith.
Same here. We'll come out of this.
We got good shocks.
I'll tell you what I told last year with the whole quarantine and the pandemic and all that. I was getting a kick out of it. I don't want to offend anybody because I know a lot of people lost their jobs and it's a tragic thing. But what I was getting a kick out of was the way people reacted to it, and the bitching and complaining about being locked down or whatever. I was like, and I told my wife, I'm like, now the country knows how it feels to be in the military. Like, this is part of it. Like, you have to follow stupid rules that some of them don't make sense, but they're put out that way. But then you also, when those stupid rules are put out, you always have that small group of who wants to enforce those stupid rules. Like, now they somehow get this fake authority about them, which is what I definitely got a kick out of all last year, was like going into places, and then you always have my kids, the Karens, my kid loves to call them, is put your mask on, and like they throw these fits. And
I actually feel bad for people who were named Karen like 2
oh,
decades ago.
dude, yeah, so bad.
Fuck, you drew the short stick on that one.
It's the biggest insult of 2020.
I forget the experiment, but it was, they took 2 groups of people, and one of them had to, and legitimately everybody knew this was just an experiment, and half of them became inmates and the other half of them became like the guards. And the way that the behavior shifted towards that, just from the perceived position of authority or power, whatever it may be. But it can go pretty rapidly, south, pretty rapidly. I
mean, the military is the perfect place to look for that. Yeah, I remember going in boot camp. I just kept thinking back to that, being in boot camp and they're like, nobody talk, during these things, and you always have those people that are like, shipmate, shipmate, shut up, shipmate, and you're like,
that term.
Yeah,
I hate
but
that term.
Those are the same people who put your mask on. Like, it's like, dude, mind your bit. Like, I'm outside, mind your business. Why are you coming up to me and talking to me? It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's one big social experiment this past year.
For sure. What advice would you give to somebody entering the community now? Let's say they're through buds in SQT, so you know that they've made it through the pipeline. Looking back in the rearview mirror, what would you say to somebody who's just starting the journey?
I'd say enjoy it, make the most out of it. I wish I would have enjoyed it more.
Same here. I was so caught in the next school, next deployment.
Yes. Take the time and enjoy where you're at. Take pictures. That's one thing. I didn't take any pictures while I was in. The ones I do have is from other people.
You can't say you didn't take any because you got in trouble for taking some pictures.
I didn't take that picture though, and somebody sent that to me.
You should probably clarify the pictures.
Be careful which pictures you do take. But I mean, take pictures of what your career and
I'd say take pictures of your friends.
Your friends, yeah. And
those are some of the most cherished memories I have left of the guys who aren't here.
Exactly. I wish I had more of them.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time and then stay true to yourself while you're in. I think I said this before, if you do make it into the community and you're in a platoon, don't let somebody else's beliefs become yours just because you feel like you have to fit in. If you, for example, if you don't drink, then keep that way. Don't drink.
Yeah.
You're going to get your balls busted for it, but believe me, it'll be fine. It'll go away.
And you'll be stronger for it too by holding on to your morals and your resolve.
And that's the biggest advice is like hold on to your morals and resolve while you're in. Be yourself. And then, don't quit.
Yeah.
That's the,
For sure.
I get asked that all like, what advice do you have? And I'm like, dude,
I'll get asked by parents, do you think my kid can be a SEAL? I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. Having been an instructor and seen every physical expression of Homo sapien and having lost money on who I thought was going to make it through, I will no longer ever make that wager. The only answer I'll give you is I don't know.
I don't know. Yep. Just don't quit.
How do you move past everything that you've gone through? Like in 10 years from now, who do you want to be? Do you want this to be a blip in the radar and you know what I mean? Like it's you have a level of notoriety that I think will be hard to escape, probably at least in the short term.
Yeah.
It'll fade like anything else does, but who do you want to be in 10 years?
I want to be, what I want to be somebody that made something good out of a real shitty situation, that was able to turn this around and help other people. You know, I want people to be able, it's not how, you know, the situations that happen to you, whether you control them or not, they don't define you. It's how you react to them. And that's what I want people to see is like my family and I refused from day one to be victims. We're not victims in anything. We're not sitting back crying like, oh, woe is me. Like, we're using what happened to us and then moving forward by helping other people, you know, paying it forward with all the help that we got. That's what I want people to see is like and I think that the victim role, the whole victim thing in this country is also an epidemic. It's like
It's a little out of control.
Yeah, everybody's a victim. It's like, no, you choose to be the victim. That's your choice, you know. And I think it's a weak choice to make, you know. Not depending on the situation, obviously, but you can, you know, get past that and make the best. I mean, there's all these quotes out there, which I can't remember any of them, but like, you know, adverse situations, getting through them, you know, can make you a lot stronger and a lot more stronger than you think you are.
Yeah.
And you can have a lot more impact on this world from getting through those adverse situations. And that's what I want to do, is just have a positive impact on people from here on out, and just help people where I can, especially where we came from, is just help them.
Yeah. Well, until they change the conversations at the top, the best way to have an impact is the tactical people taking care of the tactical people.
We'll take care of our own.
And eventually, I mean, if you play the timetable out enough, eventually some of those tactical people should ascend the ladders and be sitting at those tables. But that's a 10, 20, 30-year problem, assuming
they don't.
They're still the same human being at that table when they get there. That's not lost on me.
Okay. I was like,
yeah. Being at the table and being the person and remembering the impact that those other tactical people had on you are two different things.
It's remembering where you came from, and just like we said, being yourself and holding true to your principles and morals, which that can change as the farther you move up that ladder.
Yeah, for sure. When the book does come out, where is the best place for people to find it?
So
because where are we now? In mid-April. This will be the last episode in April, so we'll have about a month for people to get ready for it to come out.
Yeah, so EddieGallagherBook.com is there. I have actually just started our own website. Just yesterday or the day before it came out, so it's theEddieGallagher.com. That has, you'll be able to buy the book there, and then also has a link to every company that I'm affiliated with, that just to promote all their stuff. So you on there. It's like, you know, Black Rifle, Easy Day, Camp, like.
Yep. I'm assuming it'll be for sale on Amazon too.
Oh,
right?
I'm sorry. Yeah, Amazon,
the
normal stuff, and then whatever
directly
stores.
through the EddieGallagher.com.
Yeah, so people will be able to do that. It's June 15th. The people that pre-ordered it will get it a month early, so that, you know, with the signed copy. Yeah.
So that they're actually only about 3 weeks away from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we did about 10,000.
Pre-orders are live now.
No, we shut them off. So they've been up. They were up, and then as soon as DOD gave it back, we shut off the pre-orders so we could just get the book to print and then get it out there.
Okay.
But
so some of you are lucky, some of you are not.
Yes.
As is the way in life.
Those that didn't, you chose poorly.
And the Pipe Hitter Foundation, best way for people to get info and support.
So we have the obviously our web pipehitter.org, thepipehitterfoundation.org, and then we have our own Instagram, Pipe Hitter Instagram page. And then also my brother, which I said earlier, has the Pipe Hitter podcast, so you can get tons of information there. Those are the three places to check out that, and then hopefully we'll be doing more of that this year as well.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you making the trip out to Montana.
Hey, I appreciate you inviting me out here, and dude, I love Montana, man.
Yeah. More importantly, though, man, I appreciate your willingness to talk about your growth and what it takes to go through that growth. Like I try to beat the drum about therapy, which has been huge for me. Like I said, I have an interest and a curiosity about the other treatments, but at the same time, I don't know, you're talking about the intentions that you write down. Mm-hmm. I'm not at a place where I think I could define those. So for me, I don't know if I'm at a right place for it. Maybe one day I will be, but hearing people talk about what they needed to go through to, basically look in the mirror and address what was going on with them, which for everybody listening is the fucking thing you can actually control is yourself.
Yes.
I think it's huge. I think it's powerful. And I think the more people that talk about it, the better. I think we'll be better for it.
And then I just kind of say one thing for people listening is, the most powerful thing I did during that when I was going through a rough time is admitting to my kids, my wife and kids, that something was wrong and that I needed help. I sat them down on the couch one night and I just had a talk and I was like, listen, there is something wrong. Like, I'm going to get it fixed. I want to be a better person. I made a promise to them. And that seals it right there. You just made a statement, a promise to yourself out loud. And that was a huge driving factor and going forward and trying to make myself a better person, is because that's who I'm doing. I'm doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it for my wife and kids. So I made that. Anything you say out loud becomes, a statement, or you're making a promise to yourself, which you make a promise to yourself out loud and you break it. That's a big deal, I think.
Not to everybody.
Not to everybody, I guess. To me, it was.
To the people that I like.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. No, you got to be a man of your word, or a woman of your word. I didn't mean to exclude anybody. Got to be careful with this things day.
Of your word, Andy. Come on.
Listen, dude, let me just tell you right now, I am lost. I get so lost so fast on what you're supposed to say and what you're not supposed to say. I just try to tell the truth. I try to be honest. I tell people when I'm talking about something I know a little bit about, when I'm talking about something I don't know about, which is most things, and the chips fall where they may. Man.
Exactly. I'm not worried about it.
Thank you, man. That was awesome.
No, thank you.
The west bank of the river. That's A firm, west bank, and give me hell. Still give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review, or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.